Luckily, the demon we encountered this time was just a self-created dream, incapable of attacking. If the demon blocking the door was an attacking demon, even if we had the answer to death, we would still be trapped and killed because of its absolute power. Even if we were to redo it 100 times, 1,000, 10,000 times, it would be useless. Moreover, Zhao Hao had obviously enlightened his soul, becoming a spiritual master, but why did he have no reaction when facing the evil spirit? Thinking about this, Fang Hou looked apathetically at Zhao Hao, and Zhao Hao was so scared by his stare. Suddenly, Fang Hou calmly said, "Look around us, do you see any demons?" Hearing that, Zhao Hao was startled. Demons where? I don't see any. Immediately, he quickly looked up, only to see the bright moon and the black sky like a night curtain. But he did not know that in the sky, there were countless shadowy figures flying around like black vultures. The dark demons were flying over his head, but Zhao Hao did not see them. He looked around anxiously and asked, "Brother Hao, did you see anything?" Upon hearing this, Fang Hou unconsciously frowned and replied, "Maybe I mistook a bird for a demon." At the same time, Zhao Hao looked around in fear, while a demon was glaring at him, even putting a hand on his arm, but he didn't notice. At this moment, Fang Hou was lost in thought. Could it be that even when soul awakened, he still cannot see demons? Or is it because Zhao Hao is too weak at the moment? Hopefully, that's the reason. So there are still people who can see demons and will not be too lonely. At this moment, Zhao Hao looked at Fang Hou with admiration and envy. Then he thought to himself, "I have clearly awakened my soul, but I still cannot awaken my abilities. While Brother Hao can predict things, I am envious and afraid at the same time. Is this feeling not right?" After a moment of thought, Zhao Hao awkwardly looked at Fang Hou. "Ho, this place is really scary, let's go." But at this moment, Fang Hou didn't pay attention to him and walked ahead on his own. Seeing this, Zhao Hao hurriedly chased after him. Suddenly, Fang Hou turned back slightly and asked, "Speaking of which, how did you interpret the dream?" Upon hearing this, Zhao Hao's face became embarrassed, to the point where it could be seen with the naked eye. "How else can I interpret it? Just follow the way Hao taught, not caring about anything, and then try to immerse myself in the movie." At the same time, Fang Hou glanced at Zhao Hao, thinking to himself, "The first time only I survived, the demon appeared. The next times the whole army was destroyed before committing suicide. The demon didn't have time to appear, but this time, everyone's dream ended, but it still didn't appear. This brat must have done something." Right after that, he calmly looked at Zhao Hao. "So why in the dream were you touching and kissing the air?" Hearing that, Zhao Hao blushed all the way to his ears. "Did I make any other gestures?" Seeing this, Fang Hou seemed to have some thoughts and said, "Yeah, not only did you make gestures, but also made indescribable sounds." At this point, Zhao Hao quickly waved his hand. "Stop talking, Hao. I beg you not to talk anymore. It's too embarrassing." At this point, Fang Hou calmly turned back and said, "So tell me, what did you experience in the dream? Of course, I am not interested in your dream, but the fact that you have spiritual enlightenment, but lack the ability, perhaps because there was a mistake when you woke up in the dream." Hearing this, Zhao Hao helplessly folded his hands. "Fine, but you have to promise not to tell anyone else." Shortly after, Zhao Hao's face turned red, and he began to explain, "Actually, there's nothing special. After I entered the virtual scene, I closed my eyes and listened to you. I only thought about the beautiful girls in the class, but then I heard all sorts of scary sounds, telling me to stay with it. There was even a hand as cold as ice, like that of a ghostly nurse, touching me all over. I was so scared at that moment. But then I tried to resist the fear, thinking about what you said and trying to imagine to redirect my attention." Hearing this, Fang Hou looked helpless and asked, "What happened after that? Do you handle it yourself?" Seeing this, Zhao Hao blushed and explained, "I just used that as a temporary way to redirect my attention." At this moment, Fang Hou helplessly nodded and expressed his firm affirmation to Zhao Hao. "So, what happens next?" Afterward, all the surrounding sounds changed and the chilling feeling in the classroom began to disappear. Instead, there was warmth. The soft and smooth hand that was touching me also became warm, no longer feeling cold like before. The voice in the classroom also turned into li-fi fuzz. "You, Zhao Hao, weren't paying attention to the lesson, were you?" she said, and then knelt down in front of me. So when I opened my eyes, I could clearly see that it was Li-Fi Fei. I suddenly remembered what he had said earlier, that if I'm at Li-Fi Fei, then I should pinch myself to see if it is real or not. That is the flaw of the illusion. Right after that, she lay flat in front of me, her fair skin exposed in front of me. She even put her hand on me. I tried my best to control myself, but she kept seducing me and even wearing a short skirt while lying on the podium. Seeing that I couldn't hold back anymore, I directly jumped on her. Zhao Hao's face turned red, and he muttered, "What man can resist such temptation?" When I tightly held her hand and pressed my face against her chest. So I started to use my hand to squeeze her chest to see if it was real or fake. Although I couldn't distinguish between silicone and real, at that moment, I didn't care much about that, just wanted to feel it beforehand. As I squeezed down, a soft sensation spread from the palm of my hand throughout my body. Then I slowly closed my eyes and kissed her, but it didn't feel right. Then her mouth started to crack. She looked at me with a sneer and asked if I was scared. At that moment, she truly threatened my life. My mind was filled with fear. I was also threatened. Suddenly, she held my hand tightly and gasped at me. At this point, I knew it was over for me. But thinking that I was still young, if I died like this, it would be a waste. Even if I had to die, I couldn't die such a humiliating death. He flung his arms out. Just think, despite everything, I threw her out directly, then pinned her to the ground. Even though this is Li-Fi Fee, even if she is a demon, I have to fulfill my wish before I die. Then I'll close my eyes and take the risk. I don't care if Li-Fi Fee is a demon or not. I'll start dealing with her. At this moment, the demon screamed desperately. Let go of me. Let me go. Hearing this, Fang Hou covered his face in frustration, and at the same time, he also understood why the demon did not appear anymore after breaking the dream. Perhaps it was because it was afraid of this demon slayer, so it was ashamed and didn't dare to meet anyone. At the same time, Zhao Hao saw Fang Hou's silence and felt very embarrassed, so he quickly added, Anyway, we are about to die, there's no need to care so much. The most important thing in life is not to leave any regrets, don't you think so, Ho? At this point, Fang Hou didn't even bother to look sad. I think you should go home. A moment later, Fang Hou turned back towards his home, walking and saying, I'm going home to sleep first. Contact me if you need anything later. Upon hearing this, Zhao Hao looked at Fang Hou in horror and said, Oh, all of our colleagues are dead, and you still want to go home to sleep? Fang Hou slightly turned his head back with an expressionless face. So what? Do you want to call the police? Zhao Hao scratched his head awkwardly. That's true. No matter what we tell the police, they will think we are sick. At this moment, Fang Hou walked back and told Zhao Hao, There's no need to look for anyone. Someone will come looking for you. In this world, there are demons and spiritual masters, so there must be an organization specialized in dealing with demons. If not, the world would have already fallen into chaos. After saying this, Fang Hou suddenly stopped and looked at Zhao Hao seriously. If someone finds you, just say this. After Fang Hou gave him the response, the two of them agreed on their statement and then parted ways to go home. A moment later, Fang Hou returned home. His gentle wife, whom he hadn't seen for a long time, was still wearing a white silk nightgown. Her long, slender white legs were particularly attractive. She looked at Fang Hou with a seductive look and gently said, Honey, you're home. Have you eaten yet? Do you want me to cook noodles for you? Fang Hou looked at his gentle wife as usual, and at that moment, the large rock in his heart completely disappeared. He gazed intently at his wife's beautiful face, feeling incredibly beautiful. Even Photoshop couldn't do it. At that moment, he couldn't help but exclaim, It's wonderful to meet my wife. Immediately after that, he smiled rarely, saying, Yeah, I'm home. As soon as he finished speaking, the gentle smile on his wife's face disappeared instantly. Her eyes suddenly became fierce and her face became wild and fierce. Then her full red lips slowly parted. You see me. Before his wife could finish speaking, all he heard was a swoosh and a sudden flash of silver light. At the same time, blood sprayed out, and he saw Fang Hou holding a knife, each stab cutting into the tender white skin of his wife's neck. At this moment, Fang Hou felt extremely satisfied, and at the same time, his wife's beautiful face began to crack, her eyes staring at Fang Hou as blood gushed uncontrollably. In his madness, Fang Hou wickedly laughed, My dear wife, you are so beautiful. As he finished speaking, Fang Hou raised the knife again, but suddenly he saw darkness before his eyes, and his consciousness sank into darkness. When he woke up, he found himself back in front of the door to his house and looking at it in horror. He muttered, Is this death? This time he didn't even know how he had died. Was this the true power of his wife? Even the location of his death and resurrection had changed. After thinking for a moment, Fang Hou turned the doorknob once again, opened the door, and his wife, like a gentle and obedient wife, stood at the door, repeating her previous words. Honey, you're home. Have you eaten yet? Do you want me to cook noodles for you? This time, Fang Hou chose to ignore his seductive wife and went to the bedroom by himself, but he didn't shower right away. He kept thinking that the difference between evil spirits seemed to be greater than the difference between people. Not continuing to explore the psychiatric hospital was the right decision. Now his strength was too weak. He didn't know anything about the spiritual master and had to wait until Min's body was found. and then contact the relevant organizations to gather more information before making any further plans. At the same time, in the city of Dang, a joint investigation team is investigating global strange events, a secretive and well-known operation in the spiritual master community in the city of Liu Duan. At this moment, they are holding an emergency meeting at night, a group of people surrounding the meeting table with all kinds of people, men and women. But the only common point is that they are all quite young, mostly in the age range of 20 to 30, and the oldest person is the one sitting at the head of the table wearing a black suit, a striking red tie, a middle-aged man with a noble and imposing appearance, the head of the investigation bureau, Wang Dehai. At this time, he looked at the surveillance camera in a calm tone. I think you have all heard about it. Just 5 hours ago at Bai Liu Academy, our city's development area, the Demon World appeared. The coverage area of the Demon World is the Bai Liu Academy shopping area. Currently, there are no signs of spreading. At this moment, Xiao Lin began operating the computer, projecting the surveillance images onto the screen. Director Wang, this is the surveillance image near Bai Liu Academy. The surveillance inside has been invaded by a strange power, rendering all surveillance devices ineffective and the images unviewable. At the same time, everyone in the meeting room looked towards the screen, and Xiao Lin began to recount slowly. The two people in front are the survivors of this strange prison. The one with higher facial value is Fang Hou, and the slightly silly one is Zhao Hao. According to the investigation, they were both employees at the sales area. Fang Hou, 20 years old, male from Dang, is an orphan. Through the investigation, the backgrounds of both of them were nothing unusual. Before entering the demon world, they were both normal, with nothing strange about them. Wang Gehai sank into contemplation, but he did not say anything. Instead, he looked at the people below with an expressionless face and asked, "What you all think?" As soon as he finished speaking, a man wearing sunglasses looked disdainful and said, "Even ordinary people can survive and come out. The level of danger of the demonic is only this much. Just send someone over and it can be resolved." As soon as he said this, the female investigator sitting in front, Shenlan Su, retorted, "I don't think so. In the surveillance image of the man named Fang Hou, pay attention to his expression, it's terrifyingly calm. This is not a normal reaction of someone who has survived the demon world." Before she finished speaking, Lai Wenji, Shenlan Su's assistant, pushed up his golden glasses and said seriously, "Even if he was normal before, it does not rule out the possibility of being infected with spiritual energy in the demon world, accidentally becoming a spiritual master." As soon as these words were spoken, the man wearing sunglasses still insisted on his point of view, pointing angrily at the other two and saying, "The newly enlightened spiritual masters, as long as someone survives the demon world, can see the level of danger of demons is only at level C. A higher level spiritual master can solve it. Don't rush to judge the demon world that you have never experienced. Maybe they just got lucky. The newly enlightened spiritual masters can survive at the demon world with just luck, so the level of danger of demons can be seen." At this moment, Wang Dehai suddenly slammed the table and stood up, looking sternly at the man with sunglasses and shouted, "Shut up!" At the same time, looking at Shenlan Shu beside him, he said, "Tomorrow, take Lai Wenji to contact Fang Hou. Confirm if he has awakened his abilities and the level of spiritual interference, whether it is necessary to bring him to the investigation department or not." Hearing this, Shenlan Shu and Lai Wenji immediately stood up, standing straight like soldiers, and said, "Yes, Director Wang." The next morning, Fang Hou was sleeping soundly when Zhao Hao's phone call woke him up. Fang Hou groggily picked up the phone. As soon as he did, Zhao Hao's excited voice came through the other end. "Ho, I know what my ability is." At the same time, his gentle wife lying on the bed looked at him with pity and said, "Honey, don't mind him. I'm here with you. Let's go back to sleep." At this point, Fang Hou didn't pay attention to his wife, but calmly as usual, he asked, "What ability do you have now?" Zhao Hao chuckled and said in a triumphant tone, "Yesterday, I can feel the ability because it can only be activated after 11 p.m., and now it can last until 1 a.m. Upon hearing this, Fang Hou was slightly curious, but his tone remained calm as he asked, "What ability is it after all?" But at this point, Zhao Hao still didn't answer directly. "Ho, if I tell you, don't be jealous. Even though the future looks very promising, this is the ability that every man in the world desires the most. You don't know, last night I experimented and it was amazing." But this is clearly not what Fang Hou wants to hear. There is a hint of impatience on his face, at the same time showing annoyance. Immediately after that, Fang Hou didn't hesitate to hang up. A moment later, Fang Hou's phone rang again. At this point, he was so angry that he couldn't stand it. Not only was he woken up early, but he was also being told a bunch of nonsense. So, in anger, Fang Hou answered the phone. "If you keep blabbering, I will block your number." As soon as this sentence ended, the pitiful voice of Zhao Hao came from the other end of the line. All right, my ability is that after 11 p.m., I will become more handsome, my physical strength will increase, and my whole body will be muscular. As soon as these words ended, Fang Hou looked unhappy, erased their numbers, and went into the bathroom. His wife followed him, looking happy and not taking her eyes off him, saying, "Honey, you're still thoughtful." At this moment, Zhao Hao hurriedly spoke. No, I haven't finished yet. The most important thing is still behind. Physical strength is just secondary. In fact, what he has increased is sexual function. As soon as these words ended, Fang Hao's anger skyrocketed. His face immediately turned grim, and he almost crushed the phone. Zhao Hao still had no intention of stopping on the other end, saying, "Ho, you have no idea how amazing she is. Yesterday, she tested it, and it's incredible. Not only bigger and longer, but she can also hold up to 100 pounds. At this point, Fang Hou felt disgusted and decisively hung up the phone. He really couldn't listen anymore. Right after that, he had no expression on his face, put down the phone, and started preparing breakfast. At this point, Fang Hou's eyes were completely calm. I should have thought of this earlier. The ability of the spiritual master is a reflection of spiritual strength, a reflection of desires within, and the fact that it can only be activated after 11 p.m. Every day at this time during the day, he can still lie in bed and think of how to awaken this power. Although he did not expect him to awaken such a dangerous power, he did not expect it to be so casual. Handsome, muscular, enhanced sexual ability, is he not a male adult film actor? Thinking of this, Fang Hou couldn't help but sigh. At the same time, Fang Hou put the breakfast he had prepared on the table. Immediately, his wife sitting across from him smiled and said, "Honey, let's have breakfast." In another location, the investigator was driving quickly to Fang Hou's house. Not long after, the car stopped in front of Fang Hou's residence. There was only a girl with a beautiful face, a petite and beautiful face, tall and graceful posture, and cool demeanor. As soon as she got out of the car, she gently asked if they had heard the phone conversation between the two people. After speaking, she walked towards Fang Hou's rented apartment. Lai Wenji, who was behind the car, didn't rush to respond. Based on the conversation between the two, it was initially determined that they were both ordinary people in the demon world before, and their spirits were enlightened to become spiritual masters, so what are their abilities? Shenlian Shu pushed the door open and continued to ask. As soon as he finished speaking, Lai Wenji immediately faltered. Regarding Fang Hou's abilities, Zhao Hao did not specify over the phone, but based on their intentions, their abilities must be remarkable. As for Zhao Hao, according to his words, from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. every day, he'll become more handsome. His physique will also be enhanced, and his overall body muscles will mostly be strengthened. Lai Wenji hesitated when speaking, clearly struggling to find the right words, so he awkwardly said that ability. Upon hearing this, Shenlian Shu showed disdain and coldly snorted. His abilities are more suited for working as a gigolo in nightclubs. She then continued expressionlessly. Currently, the investigative team is severely understaffed. If Fang Hou's abilities are truly strong after passing the temperament test, we can consider recruiting him for the investigation. As for Zhao Hao Kia, it's unnecessary. Instead, we need to step up surveillance on him to prevent him from exploiting his abilities for wrongdoing. Upon hearing this, Lai Wenji nodded in understanding. At the same time, Fang Hao's wife sat in front of him with a coquettish tone. "Darling, can you see me?" But Fang Hou chose to ignore her, watching TV alone and switching channels to the news. However, he couldn't find any news about the real estate agent being murdered, which puzzled him. Is the power of demonic too strong, or the power of the special organization too strong? Right now, Fang Hou heard a noise outside, which was the sound of Shenlian Shu's high heels, and this noise was getting closer to Fang Hou's house. When it stopped at the door, Fang Hou slowly got out to see. At the same time, his wife poked out from the TV. "Honey, where are you going? Look at me." But Fang Hou only hesitated, moved closer to the gap in the door. He didn't know if the person outside the door was human or demon. When he looked through the cat's eye, he saw a man and a woman in work uniforms. Demonic, when not being seen, cannot interact with the real world, so they are human. At this time, Lai Wenji walked up to knock on the door. After he gently knocked on the door, Fang Hou opened the door without hesitation. At this point, Lai Wenji gently spoke. "Fang Hou, right?" Then he took out his identification card. "Hello, we are here to." But before he could finish his sentence, Fang Hou directly took the ID to look at it, then calmly spoke. "You all came faster than I thought. Please come in and talk." At this time, his wife stood next to him looking very happy. "Honey, there's a friend coming to visit." Seeing this, Shenlian Shu and Lai Wenji were both shocked by Fang Hao's actions, but it was clear that they couldn't see his wife. Shenlian Shu looked serious at Fang Hou. "You knew we were coming." Fang Hou led Shen Lian Shu and Lai Wenji into the living room. As soon as everyone sat down, Fang Hou realized that they were still staring at him as if they couldn't see his wife. Could it be that they were pretending not to see? Or is the ability to see demonic unrelated to whether one is a spiritual master or not? It seems that more useful information must be obtained, and then a chance to explore must be found. After some thought, Fang Hou looked at the identification card in Min's hand and spoke, Lai Wenji. At the same time, his wife slightly bowed, smiling brightly like a responsible wife. Honey, there are guests coming. Do I need to pour water for them? Upon hearing that, Lai Wenji smiled and replied, yes, please. After saying that, he pointed at Shen Lian Shu next to him and said, this is investigator Shen Lian Shu. I am her assistant. We are employees of the Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Department investigating strange events worldwide. At this point, Fang Hou calmly looked at the two without saying a word. Shen Lian Shu also looked at him intently, calm, really too calm. Usually when meeting with the investigators, people would choose to run away immediately or try to ask Han everything, but he remained calm to a frightening degree. Thinking about this, Shen Lian Shu spoke seriously. It seems that you are not surprised by our appearance at all. On the contrary, you seem to have known in advance. Have you known about the Investigation Bureau before? Hearing this, Fang Hou shook his head. I don't know, but there is demonic in this world, yet not causing chaos. It's not difficult to guess that there is some force behind maintaining social order. Seeing this, Shen Lian Shu looked at him with admiration. After experiencing such strange events, you can still think calmly like this. It seems that you are not a normal person. After speaking, she stood up tall on her long legs and became serious. The Investigation Bureau is a special department recruited by the government from spiritual masters, specialized in dealing with demonic. Today we are here. One is to investigate information related to the strange event at Bai Liu Academy, and two is to evaluate whether you are qualified to join us or not. At this point, Fang Hou did not interrupt her, chin on hand, silent, listening to Shen Lian Shu's introduction. Although there are also free-spirited spiritual masters in folklore, only the Investigation Bureau holds absolute information as well as the enormous resources necessary for the advancement of spiritual masters. This is an opportunity for him. At the same time, his gentle wife stood in front of her, gently and sorely said, Honey, you shouldn't look at her. Am I not beautiful enough? Don't you love me anymore? Can't you see me? At this moment, Fang Hou couldn't help but think that his wife's face was completely within his aesthetic. When she died in his arms, the cold expression on her face was also very attractive. Thinking of this, Fang Hou was extremely excited, unable to help but smile wickedly. At the same time, Shen Lian Shu also finished introducing and then turned to look at Fang Hou, ordering, First, tell me all the information about the demon world that you know. Upon hearing this, Fang Hou calmly stood up and adjusted his position, avoiding his wife's protection, and then slowly spoke. Before I answer your question, I have a few questions that need answering. As soon as he finished speaking, Shen Lian Shu immediately frowned, glaring at Fang Hou, emitting a strange purple breath. The strong man next to him, Lai Wenji, startled and frightened, began to advise Inspector Shen, calm down, calm down. He just experienced a strange event. A little suspicion is normal. Let's answer his questions first so he understands everything, and then it will be easier for him to answer our questions right. Listening to this, Shen Lian Shu said nothing, and her breathing became noticeably weaker. She seemed to naturally agree, but at this moment, Fang Hou looked at the two of them and spoke. I sense through my soul that Inspector Shen is definitely a spiritual master, while her assistant is not. A spiritual master combined with a normal person, could this be the way investigators cooperate? The intuition of a spiritual master is being disturbed by demonic forces. It seems they are all strange and extreme characters, combining a normal person with a healthy mind for supervision and control. Upon hearing this, Shen Lian Shu's face darkened, the flames of anger that had been extinguished now reignited. She looked at Fang Hou with a hostile look, clenching her jaw. Are you trying to provoke me? Do you want to die? Seeing this, Lai Wenji looked at Fang Hou with alarm. If you have any questions, ask them quickly. Don't agitate Inspector Shen anymore. If she gets angry, I won't be able to save you, and at most, after this incident, I will write a report to the chief on your behalf. Fang Hou, on the other hand, clearly didn't care how terrifying Shen Lian Shu's madness would become. His expression remained calm from start to finish. After that, he looked at the two of them seriously and asked, What exactly is demonic? Upon hearing this, Lai Wenji pushed his glasses and smiled. This is also a question that most people who have survived the strange events want to ask. What is demonic? Where do they come from? And what is their purpose? Currently, the initial definition that the Investigation Bureau gave is that it is a distorted spiritual entity with its own source of pollution. Their appearances vary greatly. Some have flesh and blood, some are souls, and some are just concepts. Furthermore, demonic often appears suddenly with no rules at all. However, the only common point is that they all have great malice towards humans, even tending to feed on human flesh, or more accurately, feed on the human soul or spiritual strength, which they rely on to enhance themselves. Moreover, each demonic is a source of pollution, much like radiation, constantly emitting demonic energy, which will invade the human mind, stimulate negative emotions, and distort the mind. The power of a spiritual master is a product of the mind being polluted by the stimulation of demonic. As soon as he finished speaking, Fang Hou raised his hand to ask further. So the second question, how is the power of the spiritual master divided according to levels? Hearing this, Lai Wenji was slightly surprised, then turned to look at Shen Lianshu, who seemed impatient. It seems that Mr. Fang already has some understanding of the spiritual master, he said. He then took out the pen and paper he had with him, and began to explain to Fang Hou, the power of the spiritual master is divided according to the level of spiritual enlightenment. At the same time, he started drawing a diagram in his notebook, while Fang Hou attentively looked at his wife beside him, who also leaned over to carefully look at the diagram of levels that Lai Wenji was drawing. After seeing the content in Lai Wenji's notebook, Fang Hao's wife suddenly gave a sinister smile, licking her lips as if she had seen various delicious desserts. Are there many delicious kinds like that? She said with a sly smile. At the same time, Lai Wenji carefully finished drawing a hierarchical diagram. In general, those with innate light points from 1% to 20% like Mr. Fang, a spiritual master in the spiritual sense, we call them little-level spiritual masters. Their abilities will increase according to the increase of their innate light points. Those with innate light points from 21% to 40% are called level 2 spiritual masters, and the intensity of their abilities will also change in quality. Those with innate light points from 41% to 60% are called level 3 spiritual masters, but with my level, I don't know their specific abilities. Similarly, there are levels 4, level 5, and so on. However, that information is confidential. The higher the level, the harder it is to have innate light points and the fewer people there are. Hearing this, Fang Hou nodded and asked, so what happens if someone achieves 100% innate light points? At this moment, Lai Wenji shook his head. Look at Fang Hou with seriousness. As far as I know, currently no one in the world has reached 100% of their spiritual enlightenment. Even those who have reached level 5 only exist in theory. To achieve higher spiritual enlightenment, one must seek stronger demonic entities, constantly going through breakthroughs between life and death. But in doing so, the mortality rate of spiritual masters will also increase. Spiritual masters and demonic entities are in opposition yet support each other. The stronger the demonic entities, the stronger the spiritual masters, but the intensity of demonic entities recorded so far is not enough to produce extremely powerful spiritual masters. Seeing this, Fang Hou intended to raise his hand to ask the third question, but Shen Lianshu, who had been patiently waiting by his side, angrily interrupted him, looking at him impatiently. I don't have time to listen to such foolish questions. Lai Wenji, give him the address of the Global Demonic Forum website so that he can look it up himself. The information he wants to know is likely to be there. At this moment, Lai Wenji was startled by a sudden scolding next to him, and he helplessly agreed. At the same time, Shen Lianshu looked at Fang Hou seriously and said, kindly remind you, this is a global dark web forum. It's best advised not to trust the emails of strangers. Immediately after that, Shen Lianshu warned sternly, now tell us about what you have encountered in the demon world, including the smallest details. If you dare to lie, leading to immeasurable losses, then you must take responsibility for it. However, Fang Hou did not pay attention to her threats, calmly raising his hand to continue. I have one last question. He then pointed to the person next to him. Have you seen my wife? Upon hearing this, his wife also looked puzzled, and the next moment, she covered her face blushing, both surprised and joyful, her eyes sparkling as she gently called out, Hi. Shen Lianshu, who was originally in a sudden rage, was stunned, and then she looked at the empty space next to Fang Hou, and then she looked around, but she didn't see any wives. At the same time, Lai Wenji was also shocked. He looked at Fang Hou with suspicion and confusion. Are you single, or do you have a wife that I don't know about? Then he firmly said, What are you talking about? The record clearly shows that I don't have a wife, not even a girlfriend. Seeing this, Fang Hou calmly looked at the two and muttered to himself, Is it really not seeing or pretending not to see on purpose? At the same time, the joyful wife danced because of Fang Hou's actions. Husband, I know you see me. Do you see me? Answer me. Shen Lianshu and the others were both suspicious and doubted whether Fang Hou's mind was having a problem. After thinking for a while, Lai Wenji glanced at Fang Hou and whispered to Shen Lian Xu, Inspector Shen, a normal person just turned into a spiritual master. In terms of mental state, instability is normal, but he was calm in an unusual way from the beginning. Now, he's starting to have hallucinations. So I suspect that Fang Hou's mental state is problematic, even more serious than normal. Suddenly, Shen Lian Xu stood up in anger, glaring at Fang Hou with hostility. Fang Hou, are you joking with us? But Fang Hou remained calm. He looked at Shen Lian Xu in anger and felt that she was not pretending, but that didn't matter to him. He still had a way out, only to see him leaning on his wife's shoulder, smiling slyly, calling out leisurely, "Darling." Upon hearing this, his wife immediately felt shocked, and the two looked at each other like that. "Darling, I see you." Upon hearing this, a hint of cruelty appeared on the wife's face. At the same time, Shen Lian Xu in anger looked at Fang Hou. "If you don't want to cooperate, just say it straight, don't." She didn't finish her sentence as Shen Lian Xu, who was originally angry, suddenly became speechless. At this moment, a crack suddenly appeared like a whirlwind, and in that black crack, the sound of flowing water echoed. The next moment, where there used to be empty space, suddenly appeared a beautiful woman wearing a white silk nightgown with a smile on her lips as she looked at Fang Hou in both restraint and joy, saying, "Honey, you see me now." After speaking, the wife slowly turned her head, directly rotating 180 degrees, staring intensely at Shen Lian Xu and the other person, and then let out a chilling laughter, saying, "Hello, I am his wife." At this moment, Shen Lian Xu and Lai Wenji stood up in astonishment, with Lai Wenji even more shocked, exclaiming, "What on earth is this?" At the same time, the pale skin of the wife began to crack like porcelain, revealing thick black cracks. Her small mouth twisted almost to her ears, and her teeth now sharp and uneven, as if saw-like. Inside her mouth, there was another mouth, as if a mouth grew inside her throat. At the same time, the long, smooth hair of the wife began to move, like black snakes writhing incessantly, emitting a chilling hissing sound in the air. Shortly after that, the wife opened her small mouth, and instead of a 3 meters long tongue, said hungrily, "I haven't had spiritual master for a long time. I miss it so much." Seeing this, Lai Wenji fell to the ground in fear, saying, "It's demonic." At the same time, Shen Lian Xu was also horrified, thinking, "Damn it, what kind of person is Fang Hou?" Hearing this, Fang Hou smiled wickedly. "Unexpectedly, my wife is demonic, and I myself did not expect it." At this point, Fang Hou smiled wickedly. "Now I see the truth. It seems that by rejecting my wife, I triggered some kind of mechanism that made her delusion become reality. This also means that perhaps in this world, only I see demonic everywhere, and only I have to constantly be on edge mentally. Every time I am carelessly discovered, I have to endure the pain of being chopped into pieces." At the same time, Lai Wenji was so frightened that he opened his mouth wide, and Shen Lian Xu clenched her jaw in anger while thinking of a way to deal with the situation. After some thought, Shen Lian Xu decided to take action. She raised her white, slender hand, and suddenly, the atmosphere began to twist. A fierce purple flame suddenly appeared in her hand, and the temperature in the room suddenly increased. It was unclear how high the temperature of this purple flame was. Next, Shen Lian Xu gathered her strength and quickly released the high-temperature flame towards her husband, saying, "Die." But as soon as she released the extremely high-temperature flame, it set Fang Hou's clothes on fire, and even the air in the room became hot as if it was burning. It became clear that this was Shen Lian Xu's power. It's no wonder she was always so hot-tempered. At that moment, there was a loud noise, and the flame on her husband's body suddenly extinguished, as if it had encountered cold water. The wife remained unharmed. Seeing this, Shen Lian Xu's pupils shrank and her face was filled with disbelief. What? How is she unharmed? At this moment, she realized that she couldn't deal with the demonic creature in front of her. Thinking this, she extinguished the flames on her hand and then turned to pull Lai Wenji next to her, saying, "Quickly run outside. It's too powerful. We can't handle it. Run fast." Although she saw the two of them intending to run away, the wife did not hesitate. She stood still, raising her pale hand, gently waving it towards the air, saying, "Die." As she spoke, the air seemed to be stirred by something, and only Shen Lian Xu and Lai Wenji were running away. A sudden cut appeared where it was cut flat like a mirror, the head directly separated from the neck, and Lai Wenji also fell to his knees with a grunt. At this point, Fang Hou did not hesitate, quickly walked outside, rushed towards Shen Lian Xu's body, and then tore her clothes apart, starting to search her body. At the same time, he also noticed the tattoo on her thigh, a pink fox that was particularly eye-catching. It seemed like she liked the color pink, but he couldn't find anything on her. Then, Fang Hou quickly searched all over Lai Wenji, suddenly seeing a letter on him. Seeing this, Fang Hou took out the letter to read it. but when he saw the content, he couldn't help but be shocked. At the same time, the gentle voice of his wife rang in Fang Hou's ears. "Honey, what are you looking for?" But Fang Hou didn't answer, continuing to read the letter carefully. Right after that, his wife whispered softly, and Fang Hou immediately felt a sharp pain, his vision darkened, and his consciousness gradually became blurred. A moment later, Fang Hou stood in front of his house, lost in thought. This time, revival will not bring him back to the time he left the demonic land. Last time, he came home and used a knife to experiment on the killed wife. Then it was considered to enter another revival node. If he doesn't encounter a new demonic event, a revival node will not change. Thinking this, Fang Hou's mouth curled up, a sinister smile appearing on his face. Fang Hou's plan officially began, so tomorrow morning at 8:40, the investigation team will come. This is also the time when the power of prediction will appear in front of everyone. Fang Hou decided to carry out his plan knowing the existence of the investigation team. There was no reason not to take advantage of it. Relying solely on himself to make all the demonic in the world suffer is almost impossible, so he must seek a reasonable external force. After some thought, he opened the door and returned home, walking straight to the bedroom. His wife always followed closely behind, laying down beside him, looking alluring. "Honey, you're home. Do you want to have dinner?" Fang Hou, as always, ignored the presence of his wife, opened his computer, and only saw his fingers quickly typing on the keyboard, swiftly accessing the demonic forum. Fang Hou wanted to see if there was any information there that he could use. He gently clicked the mouse and successfully entered the demonic forum. As soon as he entered the forum, countless terrifying images filled the screen, surrounded by flowing blood. Then, a dark color selection frame appeared divided into different sections, such as the Europe and America region, the Asian region, Japan, South Korea, and the China region. When Fang Hou clicked on the Chinese region, many small categories appeared, including demonic, spiritual master, divine key, and reward system. Seeing this, Fang Hou suddenly became very interested because among them could possibly hide the mystery of this world, the mystery of demonic. Immediately, he quickly began to skim through the titles of the posts about demonic. At the same time, his wife suddenly turned into a mouse in his hand because Fang Hou's speed at this time was extremely fast, making his wife sweat and make indescribable sounds. "Honey, slow down, too fast." Immediately, his wife covered her mouth, her face turning red, sweat drops falling from her face. "Honey, be gentle, please." But Fang Hou remained as calm as water, continuing to read the posts attentively. Although the information may not be complete, at least it is faster than discovering it yourself. He just casually clicked on the title of the post, which was written Top Secret Demonic Contract, but when he clicked to view it, his face immediately became dark. It turned out that when he clicked on the post, a reminder box appeared, countless numbers flashing in front of his eyes. He briefly counted a total of 6 zeros. In other words, to view this post, you need to pay 1 million yuan. Then he looked at other posts. Without exception, the cheapest post cost 10,000 yuan to 20,000 yuan, and posts related to top secret content cost millions of yuan, even tens of millions of yuan, which made him, a person who was struggling financially, couldn't help but feel shocked, and at the same time, couldn't help but exclaim in his heart, "This is the world of the spiritual master." At this moment, the wife behind him was also extremely surprised. "It's too expensive, honey, let you paint for you." Realizing his poverty, Fang Hou looked at the demonic forum, lost in thought. It seems that before exploiting the ability to predict the future to reap the greatest benefits, he could only browse the free area of the forum. Immediately, he looked at the hottest topic, titled "I've Awakened the Ability to Control Time." Fang Hou felt a little discouraged if even someone with the ability to control time appeared. His future prediction ability would be greatly diminished. At the same time, he gently clicked the mouse to start reading. After reading for 5 minutes, only saw at the end of the post it was written. "That's it. I have awakened the ability to control time. Not like the ability to stop time in movies and TV shows. I also named my ability time waste, for example. After you finish reading this post, you have wasted 5 minutes." Seeing this, Fang Hou's face darkened, staring intently at the post. "Is this something free? The poster is a champion universe warrior joking with me. I remember now." At the same time, the beautiful space warrior was sitting in front of the computer, sneezing loudly and saying, "Who's cursing at me?" On the other side, Fang Hou took a deep breath and then continued to watch. Fang Hou kept watching until midnight, however. He had a preliminary understanding of demonic and spiritual master. At this moment, Fang Hou suddenly thought, "This is the address provided by the investigator. Why not try to search for any official posts from the investigation organization? If it is authenticated by the official organization, then the information inside must be genuine and the price is real." So Fang Hou completely forgot about the time and he kept watching. until the next morning. However, after a sleepless night, Fang Hou finally managed to sift through information about demonic and some knowledge about spiritual master. Demonic is ranked according to the level of harm they cause, regardless of individual power, 5 levels from highest to lowest: S, A, B, C, and D. Some demonic individuals, although not very powerful, can cause great harm, so their ranking can be higher. For example, there was a demonic entity in a foreign country called Epidemic, which had weak power and could easily be killed by even a low-level spiritual master if proper detoxification measures were taken. However, it could quickly spread the epidemic over a wide area and wiped out the entire population of a large city in a short period of time, so it was ranked as an A. At level S, demonic beings have the ability to destroy a country in a short period of time, belonging to the national destruction level. The higher the level of harm of demonic, the fewer in number, but their power is also stronger. However, the origin of demonic beings has not been able to be verified. According to the forum, they appear completely randomly, without any rules, but in reality, demonic beings are always around us. At the same time, Fang Hou slowly turned his head towards his wife. In normal situations, we cannot see them. Only when certain conditions are met can they materialize and enter the real world. For those outside the circle, this is their random appearance. The wife was wearing a 2-strap nightgown, her chin resting gently on her hand as she looked at Fang Hou and said, "Good morning, dear. Would you like me to make breakfast for you?" At this moment, Fang Hou once again immersed himself in thought because he had been browsing the forums all night but still did not find anyone saying that they could see demonic everywhere. Thinking this, Fang Hou silently set himself a small goal. First, he must make money. Only when he had made enough money and become stronger could he gather more useful information from the demonic forums. However, fortunately, there was still a little harvest. At least he had gained some knowledge about demonic energy. Demonic energy takes on different forms and contains the power of the demonic, even possessing various incredible abilities. Some are weapons, such as swords, while others are common objects. At this moment, Fang Hou drew out his surgical knife, silently pondering. There is no more doubt, this surgical knife has cut through countless demonic beings and has long been contaminated into a demonic energy item. The post about demonic energy mentioned that to unleash its full power, besides activating it, one must also use spiritual power to penetrate its core and establish a corresponding connection with it. However, to gain control of demonic energy is also very risky. Once spiritual power and demonic energy establish a connection, it means that it must be awakened, and spiritual power must strike at the center of the demonic energy to establish a relationship with it. After thinking, he looked at the clock. It was already 5:30. It was more than 3 hours before the investigation team arrived, which was plenty of time. Right after that, he took the scalpel and pushed his instincts, beginning to invade relentlessly. The scalpel didn't react at all. His consciousness seemed to enter a dark area where countless demons seemed to be screaming, going crazy, relentlessly attacking Fang Hou's consciousness. Countless negative emotions such as cruelty, killing, and despair continuously rushed into his body, wanting to twist his mind, turning him into a monster. However, Fang Hou's mind is like a bottomless pit. Despite the negative emotions pouring in, he remains calm as usual, even smirking disdainfully. Is that all? Then become my prey. Accept your fate. Immediately, he pushed his spiritual power, starting to condense, leaving his own mark directly on the surgical knife. With the mark Fang Hou left, the connection between the two sides was instantly formed. When he withdrew his spiritual power, he unexpectedly found that it had been enhanced, which made Fang Hou even more satisfied with the surgical knife. So that means the current spiritual power has been activated by 2%. Fang Hou thought to himself, looking at this demon-slaying knife, it can not only be used as a basic weapon to attack demonic, but also a large amount of demonic power hidden within it can be harnessed to help activate more spiritual beings. However, because this power is extremely chaotic, with my current physical condition, I cannot bear such a great burden. I'll just wait until my body is strengthened before continuing. After thinking this through, he looked at the clock. It was already past 7 in the morning, so Fang Hou quickly made a simple breakfast. However, as he finished eating, the phone rang right on time. Seeing this, Fang Hou picked up the phone without any expression, and on the other end came an excited voice. "Who? How? I finally know what my ability is. You'll be scared when I tell you." But Fang Hou didn't give him a chance to speak, cutting him off insensitively. "Yeah, the ability to make the bed." Hearing this, Zhao Hao Kim's jaw almost dropped to the ground. "Oh, how did you know how? Did you already know?" Then Zhao Hao started to sound dejected. "This is so frustrating. I wanted to impress you, Hao. I've discovered the weakness of this ability now. In the future, there will be no surprises in life anymore." Fang Hou was eating fried eggs. He calmly said, "Okay, nothing to worry about. I'll hang up first. I have another guess. After saying that, he decisively hung up the phone. At the same time, in a commercial vehicle, Lai Wenji was eavesdropping on the conversation of the two people. The eavesdropping device in his hand fell to the ground because he was shocked to see him sweating profusely. With an unbelieving expression on his face, Shen Lian Shu, beside him, immediately frowned and said, "What are you doing?" Lai Wenji regained his composure and didn't even bother to pick up the eavesdropping device. He just looked at Shen Lian Shu in astonishment and said, "I've heard the abilities of Fang Hou and Zhao Hao." Hearing this, Shen Lian Shu became a little interested and said, "Oh, then tell me, what ability makes you so agitated? Tell me about it." Seeing this, Lai Wenji hastily continued, "Zhao Hao's ability is the ability of the bed." Hearing this, Shen Lian Shu expressed disdain. Indeed, enough to shock. This made Lai Wenji quickly continue, "Listen to me all the way. Zhao Hao's ability is not important. What is important is Fang Hou. He can predict the future." As soon as he withdrew his words, Shen Lian Shu was extremely shocked. "Are you sure you're not mistaken? Fang Hou's ability is predicting the future." Lai Wenji nodded. He just said on the phone that there will be 2 guests coming. His tone was very confident. Hearing this, Shen Lian Shu was even more shocked. Who are the 2 guests? Could it be that he's talking about? At this point, she turned her head incredulously. Is there really such an ability to predict the future in this world? Even if there is, it shouldn't appear in a first-level spiritual master. Hearing this, Lai Wenji nodded. That's right. The stronger the ability, the more limitations there are. Do you still remember the person with the ability to teleport that we interviewed last week? As soon as she finished speaking, Shen Lian Shu burst out laughing. You mean the one who can only teleport 10 centimeters at a time, then has to wait for 1 hour for his spiritual power to recover before he can use his ability again, a first-level spiritual master, right? At this point, Lai Wenji leaned on the railing, puzzled. That's right, Fang Hou is a new first-level spiritual master. He should have been similar to that person, only able to predict things that will happen in the near future. But he's completely opposite. It's really surprising that he can predict that we were coming to find him. At the same time, the car stopped at the foot of the Fang Hou building where Shen Lian Shu was staying. Shen Lian Shu opened the car door and said, "Instead of sitting here speculating, why don't we go meet him?" She looked very excited and said, "Let me see if his ability to predict the future is real or not." But when they reached the 5th floor, they were surprised to find the door already open, as if waiting for them. Seeing this, Shen Lian Shu and the other person stood still. They didn't know if Fang Hou knew or if the door was not properly closed, but quickly, Shen Lian Shu regained her composure and pushed the slightly open door. But at this moment, Shen Lian Shu was once again shocked by the scene in front of her. She saw Fang Hou standing straight with a handsome face, calmly making tea. On the tea table were 3 cups of tea, 1 in front of Fang Hou and 2 on the sofa, with steam rising from the tea, clearly just boiled. Suddenly, Fang Hou picked up the teacup and calmly said, "Inspector Shen, Mr. Lai, please have a seat." Upon hearing this, the 2 of them appeared even more surprised and suspicious. They walked into the room and Shen Lian Shu, being very brave, took the first seat on the sofa and spoke in a gentle tone. "How did you know my name? And as for this teacup, did you know we were coming?" Fang Hou disregarded her suspicion and calmly took a sip of tea. Then, with a serious expression, he said, "Because my eyes can see the future." At this moment, upon hearing Fang Hou's confession, a storm of thoughts and doubts arose in the hearts of the 2. Although Shen Lian Shu was very surprised, the doubt in her heart had not dissipated. Then she crossed her arms and looked at Fang Hou with suspicion. "You can see the future. How do you prove it?" Seeing this, Fang Hou calmly looked at the 2 of them and said, "Both of you are from the Investigation Bureau. This time you came here primarily for 2 purposes. One is to investigate the strange case at Bai Liu Academy, and the other is to assess my and Zhao Hao's qualifications to join the Investigation Bureau." At the same time, the wife next to him showed unhappiness. "You shouldn't look at her, you should be looking at me." As soon as she finished speaking, Lai Wenji shook his head with a serious expression. "Fang, this does not prove that you can predict the future. As long as you understand the investigation beforehand, our purpose for being here is easy to guess at this time." Fang Hou looked at Lai Wenji, and at the same time, a mysterious smile appeared on his face. Seeing this, Lai Wenji shuddered and suddenly touched his nose. "What's wrong, Fang? My reasoning is very reasonable." Fang Hou looked at him with satisfaction. "Then I'll tell you something that no one knows. In fact, I have always secretly loved Shen Lian Shu." Hearing this, Lai Wenji immediately blushed, his face turning red to his ears, and Shen Lian Shu next to him was also shocked. Furthermore, he had already written a love letter, kept in the left pocket of his shirt. Lai Wenji couldn't believe it, his cheeks getting even redder. "Don't say anything anymore." After speaking, he covered the pocket on his chest with his hand. Seeing this, Shen Lian Shu looked at Lai Wenji in surprise. Is he telling the truth? At the same time, the wife was sitting between the two men with a suspicious look on her face, looking at Lai Wenji. How could he have secretly missed you? But at this point, Fang Hou still didn't stop, but directly spoke out the contents inside. Lian Shu, when you read this letter, I may have died, but the truth is, there was always something I wanted to say to you. Before Fang Hou finished speaking, Shen Lian Shu had approached Lai Wenji, snatching the left pocket of his coat and searching through it. At this point, Lai Wenji hurriedly explained, Inspector Shen, you also know me. Obviously, Fang Hou is talking nonsense. I really don't have it. Before the words were finished, Shen Lian Shu took out the letter from the pocket that Fang Hou had mentioned. She immediately opened it and quickly skimmed through a few lines of text. The surprise in her heart grew stronger. She couldn't believe it was exactly what Fang Hou had said. After reading the contents of the letter, Shen Lian Shu was not only extremely surprised, but her expression also became complicated. But she quickly calmed down and then threw the letter back to Lai Wenji, at the same time looking at Fang Hou with seriousness. Even if you know the contents inside, doesn't mean you can predict the future. After all, this is not the content written in the future, but what he wrote in the past. Facing the doubt, Fang Hou did not refute, but calmly poured the tea. Inspector Shen may have the ability to control fire. The measurements of the three circles are 85, 63, 80. At the same time, his wife had turned into a warm tea in Fang Hou's hand. She blushed and said, Honey, guess what my measurements are? Hearing this, Shen Lian Shu immediately became angry. Her eyes flashing a hint of red and yellow, she slammed the table with force. My abilities are no secret. Anyone who has been in contact with the spiritual master world will have heard of it to some extent. As for the measurements, if you can guess them accurately, it only proves that you are a lecher. Meanwhile, Lai Wenji, beside them, blushed and remained silent, silently remembering the measurements. Seeing this, Fang Hou did not rush, took a sip of tea, and then calmly looked at Shen Lian Shu. Inspector Shen, do you have a secret that you don't want others to know? Do you really want me to reveal it? Hearing this, Lai Wenji was extremely surprised. His eyes widened, and he was also very interested. Shen Lian Shu looked at him with disdain. Go ahead, I have nothing to hide. As soon as he finished speaking, Fang Hou chuckled mischievously. Ha ha. Right after that, Fang Hou deliberately chin-wagged. Inspector Shen, you really like pink. At this point, the wife slightly bent over and smiled, approaching Fang Hou. Honey, what color do you like? At this point, Fang Hou relied on his lingering memories, pretended to think, and slowly said, Inspector Shen, your underwear is pink, and you even have a pink tattoo on your body. Before the sentence was finished, a sudden burst of fiery flames erupted in Shen Lian Shu's white hand. A stream of heat rushed in. At this point, she completely lost control, extremely excited as she glared at Fang Hou. This is not a prediction of the future. Clearly, you have the ability to see through. You and Zhao Hao are no different. Neither of you is anything good. But in the face of the fiery flames, Fang Hou was not afraid. There were no ripples on his face. The ability to predict the future is not as you think. You can't know everything that will happen in the future, for example. Last night, I only predicted that you would come to my house today, so I wasted my spiritual power to see the future scene, including the scene of the assistant reading the love letter in the middle of the night and the scene of Inspector Shen tidying up the closet. Listening to that, the flames of Shen Lian Shu slowly extinguished, but the unfriendly look in her eyes still hadn't disappeared. The redness on her cheeks hadn't faded either. Moreover, she always felt, Fang Hou not only saw these things, anyway the tattoo was. After thinking, Shen Lian Shu felt extremely ashamed. She pulled her dress tight and sat down on the sofa. What you just said doesn't count as predicting the future, or are you telling me the winning numbers for tonight's lottery? As soon as she finished speaking, Fang Hou, without any hesitation, immediately found pen and paper, pretending to think and then wrote very quickly. Fang Hou wrote a series of numbers for Shen Lian Shu, but in fact, those were all numbers from the other world. His real plan was to wait for the lottery results, then proceed with the staged suicide, during which he could gather more information. At this moment, Shen Lian Shu looked at the numbers in his hand, believing that Fang Hou had 7 or 8 parts, but still questioned him. If you have the ability to predict, why don't you buy lottery tickets to get rich? Hearing this, Fang Hou pretended to be helpless. Have you heard of the butterfly effect? So don't try to use the power of the investigation agency to do anything out of the ordinary. At this point, Shen Lian Shu looked at Fang Hou with suspicion. If the numbers you give are not correct then. Before she could finish her sentence, Fang Hou confidently interrupted. If it's not correct, I can make it up. Seeing Fang Hou so arrogant, Shen Lian Shu couldn't help but to doubt him. Shen Lian Shu once again became angry, and the flames in her hands slowly flared up. Lai Wenji, standing beside her, quickly advised Inspector Shen calm down. The lottery draw starts tonight anyway. Then he turned to look at Fang Hou. Mr. Fang, we should continue talking about your experience at the haunted dormitory at Bai Liu Academy. Fang Hou looked at the teacup in his hand, pretended to think for a moment, and then feigned extreme fear as he recounted in a fearful tone. That place is called the psychiatric hospital Tianshan. It appeared very suddenly, and by the time we realized it, it had overlapped with the space of Bai Liu Academy's staff room, trapping everyone inside the psychiatric hospital. Fang Hou did not reveal too much as the capabilities of a spiritual master at the first level are limited. It is sufficient to selectively recount experiences in the parallel realm. As for the appearance of the surgical knife, it would undoubtedly cause unnecessary trouble, so it is best to temporarily hide its existence. At the same time, Fang Hou noticed that the teacup was empty, so he stood up to get the teapot. As he shook the pot, he realized that it was also nearly empty. Quickly, Fang Hou brewed a new pot of tea and placed it on the table, then gently said, "The situation is as follows. Due to my limited spiritual power reserves, I can only use my predictive abilities once. When faced with a choice between two paths, I saw two different images. One showed Zhao Hao and I escaping the nightmare demon and successfully fleeing through the emergency exit." Fang Hou calmly continued, "As for the intersection over there, it leads to several hospital rooms, and behind each room is a tremendously terrifying demonic aura. Zhao Hao and I will be chased and killed by demon nurses, so I deduce that there are at least dozens of demons inside the Tianshan Psychiatric Hospital." Upon hearing Fang Hou's confident account, Lai Wenji couldn't help but be astonished, even raising his voice by 8 degrees. "Dozens of demons, are you sure?" Meanwhile, Xinlian Su expressed extreme dissatisfaction. "Fang Hou, do you realize what you're saying? Globally, there have been numerous events related to demons, but there has never been any precedent showing that dozens of demons coexist in a demon world location. Even in normal cases, demons usually come in pairs with the possibility of infiltration or fusion, but they cannot peacefully coexist. They only know how to devour each other, so it is fundamentally impossible for dozens of demons to gather together. Therefore, if you are not mistaken, they are just a group of enslaved demons controlled by higher-level demons. Despite their large numbers, their true strength is not powerful." Here is the translated text. Speaking of this, Shenli and Shu looked at Fang Hou with a sneer. "I think you were just scared, and you basically don't know anything about demonic, so you mistook a demon servant for demonic." Fang Hou didn't say much, just looked at her calmly. "With your level of ability, it's very difficult to understand what I'm saying. Just report the truth." Last night, Fang Hou had looked at the global demonic forum, so of course he knew what a demon servant was. Then he closed his eyes and slowly said, "Weakness and ignorance are not barriers to existence. Pride is the barrier." As soon as he finished speaking, Xinlian Su's burst of anger immediately erupted. She glared at Fang Hou. Lai Wenji quickly intervened with a friendly smile. "Mr. Fang, thank you for your honesty, however. For the investigation agency, the ability to predict the future is extremely important, so today, we still have to bother you to come to the investigation agency." Upon hearing this, Fang Hou immediately set down his tea, stood up abruptly, and went outside. Seeing this, Lai Wenji was extremely surprised. How can he be so fast? After an hour's drive, Fang Hou was taken to the Ludang City Investigation Office, which was located in a remote and mysterious place. When they got out of the car, Lai Wenji and Xinlian Su led the way, and Fang Hou followed behind with his hands in his pockets. Not long after, they arrived at a rather unimpressive door, next to which was a sign that read, "Demonic Investigation Bureau." At this point, Lai Wenji looked at Fang Hou and said, "Fang, please come with me." At the same time, Fang Hou calmly looked ahead. It seems that the spiritual master also needs certain conditions to be able to see demonic. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible to be in the midst of an investigation without seeing any, as there are many demonic wandering around everywhere. Seeing this scene, Fang Hou became even more certain that only he could see the demonic on the street. Otherwise, the specialized demonic investigation agency would never let the demonic wander around like this. Thinking of this, Fang Hou suddenly smiled slyly. The demonic investigation agency, don't disappoint me. Under the guidance of Lai Wenji, Fang Hou descended a staircase to the basement. After passing through the dark staircase, he arrived at the headquarters of the investigation agency. Fang Hou couldn't believe that the main base of the agency was underground and the building on the surface was just a disguise. At the same time, an employee was on the phone. Initially, he politely asked who was on the other line, then answered the phone and walked out. As he passed Fang Hou, the man became impatient. "I don't buy houses, don't take out loans, don't swim, don't exercise, and I'm an honest person when it comes to versus foot massages." But when he saw that there was no one around, he gently asked, Where are you guys located? Quickly send me a text message. Despite the man's deliberate attempt to be careful, Fang Hou still heard a slight noise. Looking around, he saw many people working inside the investigation room, each person busy with their work. Some were staring at computer screens with worried expressions. At that moment, a man who had just finished his work stretched and accidentally hit the woman behind him, causing her to spill her entire cup of water on herself. The man quickly stood up, continuously apologizing and helping the woman dry herself. But she exclaimed, "I can do it myself. Stop touching me. Where are you touching?" Shortly after, they passed through the noisy work area and entered a resting room. As they sat down, Fang Hou spoke with hidden meaning, "Your agency is really bustling." At the same time, Lai Wenji poured a cup of tea for Fang Hou, while Shen Lei and Shu stood at the door, arms crossed, and said coldly, "Lai Wenji, come with me and report to the agency head." Finished speaking, the two of them immediately stepped out of the room and headed towards the office of the bureau chief. As for Fang Hou, he drank tea while looking at the tightly closed door, his face full of thought. He then closed his eyes and his whole body continuously emitted spiritual energy, as it turned out that with the help of the spiritual energy in the surgical knife, Fang Hou's spiritual energy had been enhanced, so he wanted to try to see if his sensing ability had improved. Indeed, his sensing ability was much sharper and the range of his perception was wider, but he still hadn't reached the limit. Within Fang Hou's range of perception, he unexpectedly discovered that within this investigation, there was another world. He then sensed and saw Shen Lei and Shu on her way to the bureau chief's office. In addition, he also relied on their direction to easily find a bureau chief's office. Right now, Shen Lei and Shu felt something was not right, as if there were eyes watching them from behind. She suddenly turned around, but found no one behind her. This sudden action startled Lai Wenji. "What's wrong, Shen Lei and Shu? Is there something unusual in the office?" Seeing this, Shen Lei and Shu suspiciously replied, "There's nothing." At the same time, Fang Hou sat on the sofa with an expressionless face. She's quite sharp. In the office of the chief, the two of them began to seriously report on the investigation, but they were also very in sync, with no mention of the pink love letter and underwear. After listening to the report of the two, Wang Dehai was also extremely surprised. "Are you sure his ability is to predict the future? Besides you two, does anyone else know?" Shen Lei and Shu casually replied, "There's also Zhao Hao, who escaped from the demon world with Fang Hou." At this moment, Wang Dehai solemnly put down his teacup and said, "Predicting the future is a serious matter. Whether true or not, it must be kept as an absolute secret. No information can be leaked. We also need to arrange security measures for Zhao Hao. Do you all understand?" After speaking, Wang Dehai asked, "Where is the lottery ticket?" he wrote. Upon hearing this, Lai Wenji respectfully handed the paper to Wang Dehai. At this moment, Wang Dehai looked closely at the numbers with a thoughtful expression, predicting the lottery is not impossible. He had already arranged for support. Lai Wenji, go find 2 reliable people to oversee the entire process to ensure that tonight's lottery result is completely random. After speaking, he slammed the paper down on the table. I need to see how capable this Fang Hou is. Following Wang Dehai's instructions, Lai Wenji immediately set out to find people to oversee tonight's lottery drawing to avoid any manipulation by Fang Hou. At this time, in the office of the bureau chief, only Wang Dehai and Shen Lei and Shu were left. Shortly thereafter, Wang Dehai solemnly said, "Miss Shen, you are also a seasoned spiritual master. Based on your experience, do you think he is lying?" Hearing this, Shen Lei and Shu did not take revenge, but still expressed her true thoughts. If he is fake, then he must be a very strong psychological scammer. Moreover, future predictions are easily exposed. He has no reason to make up this story to deceive us. At the same time, Wang Dehai nodded and lifted the teacup, while Shen Lei and Shu spoke. "However, in my feelings, I think Fang Hou was lying." Hearing this, Wang Dehai almost spit out the tea he had just sipped. This action almost made him retire early. After that, he put the cup down and looked at Shen Lei and Shu with suspicion. Clearly, Shen Lei and Shu is very serious, relying on a woman's intuition. Wang Dehai helplessly waved his burnt hand and said, "It's impossible to fake it. We'll know by tonight." Wang Dehai said seriously with a burnt hand. Yes, in the recording, he said that the Tianshan Psychiatric Hospital has dozens of demonics. Hearing this, Shen Lei and Shu immediately smirked and said, "Director Wang, you can't possibly believe his words. There is no demon world like that in the world. Even if Fang Hou knew everything beforehand, he wouldn't be able to survive." Then she confidently signaled with her hand, and according to my analysis, Bai Liu Academy's demon world only has 2 demonics. One of them is a female doctor-shaped demonic, which I suggest naming Demonic Cultivator. The rule is to kill the nearest person, and it only kills 1 person at a time. From the description, its level is D. The other one is a demonic that controls nightmares, which I suggest naming Nightmare. The rule is to force people nearby into nightmares and then trigger their fear to kill them. There is a suspicion that it may have the ability to attack without a physical form, but considering its special ability to potentially make multiple people fall into nightmares at once, I suggest ranking it as a C, because Bai Liu Academy is a fixed demon world and is located in a densely populated area. I recommend ranking the danger level as C. Listening to this, Wang Dehai rubbed his chin in contemplation. How frightening is the level of fear in a nightmare? At this point, Shen Lian Shu casually adjusted her gloves and slowly said, "Frightening sure, but only scares ordinary people. Even Zhao Hao, a timid rookie, can rely on watching horror movies to dispel fear and survive. Senior spiritual masters are even less affected. If his abilities were known in advance, the danger level would be even lower than that female doctor." As soon as she finished speaking, Wang Dehai nodded in agreement. "All right, then bring Fang Hou here. I want to meet him." At this point, Shen Lian Shu looked surprised. "Director Wang, you want to personally meet Fang Hou? I'm afraid I can't comply with that. If he's at risk of losing control, we need to ensure safety. Let the team leader or deputy team leader meet him instead." Hearing that, Wang Dehai helplessly shook his head. They are currently not in the office, just went to search for the head demon. At the same time, the captain of the investigation bureau, Yang Ming, took a deep puff of his cigarette, then only heard a whoosh sound leaving a blurry shadow, heading towards the exit of the investigation bureau. But as he approached the door, Deputy Captain Bai Tu also stepped onto the stairs, only to see Bai Tu take a step and catch up with Yang Ming. Suddenly, the scene changed. The two at the door refused to let the other go first, but Yang Ming still rushed ahead, running straight to the driver's seat. But Bai Tu also refused to give up, jumping onto the bottom of his car. Seeing this, Yang Ming angrily said, "Bai Tu, get off the car. Let go of me. Don't follow me." But Bai Tu didn't care at all. "Don't be so stingy, just a convenient ride." On the other side, in the room, Shen Lian Shu brought a dedicated lie detector in front of Fang Hou and began patiently introducing the lie detector based on the fluctuation of spiritual energy to test for lies. As long as you are not truthful, the machine will react. Every new spiritual master must undergo this test. Upon hearing this, Fang Hou did not hesitate. With an expressionless face, he placed his hand on the machine. "Ask away." Seeing this, Shen Lian Shu looked at Fang Hou with suspicion, then began to ask the first question. "If there is a powerful demon slaughtering the city, how would you choose? 1 is to fight the demon, 2 is to run away by yourself, 3 is to save as many people as possible and then run away together." As soon as he finished speaking, Fang Hou decisively made his choice. "I choose option 1 to fight the demon." At the same time, the lie detector also showed that Fang Hou was not lying. At this moment, Shen Lian Shu looked at Fang Hou with suspicion and also a bit surprised. This answer was beyond her expectations. She never thought that Fang Hou would be someone who would sacrifice his life for others. But Fang Hou also did not lie about this question, because he hated all kinds of evil beings, so even if he couldn't fight back, he would still fight. If he couldn't kill it once, he would fight twice. If he couldn't kill it twice, he would fight 3 times, die, and come back to life several times. Anyway, he would find the weakness of the opponent and then kill it. At this moment, Shen Lian Shu looked at Fang Hou again and spoke. Question 2. If in the future humans clearly cannot resist evil creatures, at this time, a smart demon appears to invite you to join the side of the evil creatures, even promising to bestow upon you enormous power, unimaginable authority, and status, will you agree? Without hesitation, Fang Hou calmly replied, "No." Seeing this, Shen Lian Shu faintly showed a hint of surprise. The lie detector did not detect any movement in the man being interrogated. At this point, Shen Lian Shu was a little displeased, as she always felt that Fang Hou was not the type of person who would wholeheartedly care for others. Immediately after, she asked the third question. "If the devil promised to give you a great deal of power and at the same time promised to protect your family, friends, and loved ones, would you agree?" Fang Hou still responded briefly and succinctly, "No." At this point, Shen Lian Shu remained steadfast in her thinking, looking at Fang Hou with suspicion. "So what if your family pledged allegiance to the devil and invited you to join them?" Fang Hou replied simply and clearly, "I don't have a family." Hearing this, Shen Lian Shu couldn't believe it. She exclaimed, "What about friends then? As far as I know, you and Zhao Hao have a good relationship. He is your only friend. What if he wants you to betray humanity?" Hearing this, Fang Hao's face showed a hint of hostility, and he said indifferently, "I don't mind not having friends." The whole room fell into silence. Shen Lian Shu looked at the lie detector without any reaction. She felt a bit incredulous. After gathering herself, Shenlei and Su asked one final question: what do you want to do most after becoming a spiritual master? Or in other words, what is your ideal? Fang Hou exuded a strong spiritual aura, his expressionless face looking at Shenling Su. Kill all the demons in the world. Hearing this, Shenling Su was extremely shocked. Her pupils contracted, dumbfounded as she looked at Fang Hou. At this moment, Shenling Su was speechless. She quietly bowed her head, sinking into silence. She had witnessed many tests of the spiritual master. Each person had twisted psychology. The darkness of human nature would be endlessly magnified. Their answers were also selfish and distorted. For example, the first question: when a powerful demon was rampaging in the city, some people chose to run away directly, while those with heavy spiritual pollution even made people shocked. There is a demon rampaging, so let's kill and see who kills faster, who kills more. The second question was even more illogical. If you can't fight back, then join whoever is strong, whoever treats you well. The third question doesn't even need to be mentioned. The ideal was ruthless in chaotic times. There were even twisted spiritual masters who wanted to marry 100 wives, becoming a standard demon to save humanity and save the world. Compared to these things, Shenling Su couldn't help but had a little change in her view of Fang Hou. At this moment in her eyes, Fang Hou seemed like a great god, and she also looked at Fang Hou with tears in her eyes. Since when has there been someone in the spiritual master team who is so compassionate towards the suffering of the world? Someone with self-deception like this, if the spiritual test machine is not wrong when it says he is telling the truth, that he is truly a little angel of humanity. No, he is a true saint. He looks proud and cold, with a face as cold as ice, but in fact he hides a warm heart, always shining for humanity. Could it be that he is the one who people say is cold on the outside, warm on the inside? Compared to him, I am no different from a dark earthworm. Shortly after, she slapped the lie detector in disbelief, complaining, "This is ridiculous. The lie detector must be broken." Little did she know that all of Fang Hou's answers today were the truth. He not only wanted to eradicate all evil spirits, but also wanted to cruelly torture his beloved wife. Furthermore, he couldn't let his wife die too easily. She had to experience what he had gone through, endure 100 or 1,000 times the pain. Fang Hou not only surpassed the lie detector with his intuition, but also gave perfect 100% answers. Therefore, Shenling Su brought Fang Hou to Wang Dehai's office. When Shenling Su closed the door, she looked at Wang Dehai sitting in his chair and said, "Director General Wang, he's here." After that, Shenling Su walked up to Wang Dehai, handed him the inspection report, and looked at him seriously. He passed the character test. Hearing this, Wang Dehai expressionlessly took the report and, as usual, looked at Fang Hou's resume. Then he smiled faintly and said, "So this is Fang Hou. Please introduce yourself. I am Wang Dehai, currently the director of the Liu Tang City Investigation Department. Please have a seat." But at this moment, Wang Dehai was extremely shocked to find that Fang Hou had been sitting opposite him all along. Fang Hou, with an expressionless face, nodded. "Hello, Director Wang." As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Dehai was immediately taken aback, nearly crumpling the report in his hand. Are the young people all so arrogant nowadays? Shenling Su was even more angry, and Wang Dehai looked at Fang Hou with a spiteful and irritated look. At this moment, he flipped through the report just as he opened his mouth to say a word, but then it seemed to be choked back. His expression was extremely shocked. His eyes widened like two bronze bells, unbelievably looking at the report in his hand. It can't be. This is a report. This is a copy of the exam. What else could it be? Then he couldn't believe it and took out a pair of glasses, put them on, and looked again. At this point, his hands couldn't help but tremble, just because this report was too perfect. So perfect that it was unbelievable, even causing him to break out in a cold sweat. Seeing this, he looked bewildered at Shenling Su, signaling with his eyes, "Miss Shen, is this real?" Shenling Su helplessly nodded, giving a definite answer. Then Wang Dehai tried to suppress the astonishment in his heart, took a deep breath, calmly controlled his emotions, and placed the report on the table. Then suddenly he grabbed Fang Hou's hand, tears welling up in his eyes. "Mr. Fang, you're truly perfect. Even without the ability to predict the future, I still want to personally open the door for you and immediately invite you to join the investigation team." Hearing that, Fang Hou calmly withdrew his hand and said, "Let's wait for the lottery results before we talk. This old fox is probing me for no reason. Joining the investigation is meaningless. Joining as someone with the ability to predict the future, and then demanding suitable conditions to exchange for new resources is his purpose." Wang Dehai then sternly said, "So you're not biting the bait. It seems that you really do possess such strong abilities." Then he calmly said, "You said your ability is to predict the future. So are there any limits on time or the number of times?" Hearing this, Fang Hou laughed coldly and then began to boast, "In the demon world, I can travel between the future and the past, witnessing countless life and death experiences and countless possibilities." Then he looked at Wang Dehai seriously. "To me, the future is just details that can be observed and altered at will." Seeing this, Wang Dehai frowned. "Damn it, he's got me figured out." Shenling Su, beside him, clenched his jaw. "Can't you just be straightforward? Why do you have to pretend?" After that, Wang Dehai started chattering, introducing Fang Hou to the core staff of the agency and the ranks of the spiritual master stages. But just as he was about to mention which stage Fang Hou would join, a young man in uniform rushed in panic and opened the door. Seeing this, Wang Dehai immediately frowned, looking at the young man with dissatisfaction. "I told you so many times, don't rush like that." Before he could finish speaking, the young man directly interrupted, looking at Wang Dehai in a panic. "Director Wan, something bad has happened. Deputy Team Leader Bai, he's dead." Hearing this, Wang Dehai immediately stood up, looking at the young man in shock. Shenling Su also looked shocked. The two couldn't believe it and exclaimed in unison, "What? How could he be dead?" At the same time, Fang Hou sat next to him listening to the news but remained very calm. At the same time, Fang Hou also began to calculate. Listening to Wang Dehai just now, Deputy Team Leader Bai has almost reached the level of Spiritual Master Level 3, so how strong could he be? It's a pity he died like that, or maybe I can use his help. It turned out that before that, Team Leader Yang and Deputy Team Leader Bai were both tracking the whereabouts of the demon head. Meanwhile, Deputy Team Leader Bai had found the demon head in an abandoned building in Shambay town, but he did not inform Team Leader Yang. Initially, with the strength of the Deputy Team Leader Bai, dealing with the demon head was not a problem, but no one expected that there was another evil demon hidden in the abandoned building in Shambay. When Deputy Team Leader Bai was battling the demon head, the other evil demon unexpectedly attacked, so Deputy Team Leader Bai angrily slammed his hand on the table, glaring at the young man. "There's another evil demon. How can you guys do intelligence work like this? How could you not know that there's another evil demon hidden in Shambay town?" At this moment, the young man was so scared that he was about to cry. Before, when the intelligence department conducted a thorough search, we checked thoroughly in Shambay town at that time. We really didn't discover that evil demon. It was as if it suddenly appeared. Upon hearing this, Wang Dehai took a deep breath, trying to control the anger in his heart. Where is Yang Ming then? Seeing this, the young man frowned. Captain Yang left for Shambay town immediately after receiving the news. At this point, Wang Dehai did not respond immediately. As the head of the investigation department, he understood that he must not let his anger affect his judgment. Shortly thereafter, Wang Dehai calmed down and then casually said to Fang Hou, "Xiao Wang, first take Fang to the rest room. Miss Shen, you can come to the meeting with me in the conference room later." After speaking, Wang Dehai immediately led Shen Ling Zhu away. The young man called Xiao Wang led Fang Hou to the restroom. As soon as they stepped out of the office, Fang Hou immediately used his intuition and heard Wang Dehai almost shouting, "Xiao Lin, prepare the car. All the investigators are heading to Shambay. Inform the organization to convene an emergency meeting. Also, call and inform the other spiritual masters. As long as they can solve this demonic incident, the investigation bureau is ready to give you a reward of 3,000 currency and 10 incense sticks." At the same time, the investigation bureau became chaotic. No one could believe the news from Deputy Chief Bai about the money and incense sticks. Fang Hou immediately felt very intrigued. He had seen images of these two things on the demonic forum, and it was said that they were both made by the headquarters of the investigation bureau, but Fang Hou had never seen the real items. According to the introduction on the Evil Spirit forum, currency is actually a type of steel material that can conduct spiritual energy, often used to make weapons and armor, considered as the main currency to circulate among spiritual masters. The incense stick is also a type of incense produced by the main headquarters of the investigative agency, capable of suppressing spiritual pollution, helping spiritual masters reduce their loss of control over spiritual energy. It can be said that this is a life-saving medicine for every spiritual master, and it is also an extremely valuable resource. At this moment in the bedroom, Fang Hou was calmly drinking tea, but in his heart, he was constantly calculating. The city's top spiritual master is a high-level spiritual master, but he can easily die like that, with just two evil spirits. This shows that these two evil spirits have a relatively high level. Even a low-level evil spirit like the female doctor, its skin is as tough as steel. Ordinary weapons cannot break through its defensive layer. On the other hand, humans are different. Their bodies are too weak. Their ability to endure is too low. Even with spiritual energy, when facing evil spirits, humans are still in a weak position. However, Fang Hou didn't care about that because the weak are the spiritual masters, not him. Thinking this, Fang Hou slowly stood up, then glanced at Xiao Wang beside him, then lifted the curtain covering the room. Alright, worrying is useless. Hearing this, Xiao Wang finally regained consciousness. He found Fang Hou had left his seat, standing behind him. Immediately, he turned to look at Fang Hou suspiciously, but before he could speak, Fang Hou struck a powerful blow to his neck. Xiao Wang immediately passed out, falling to the ground. Next, Fang Hou quickly removed Xiao Wang's uniform and put it on himself. He intended to disguise himself as an investigator, taking advantage of the chaos to gather more useful intelligence. Seeing Fang Hou dressed neatly, walking around in the investigation with a casual air, casually eavesdropping on the conversations of the staff, Deputy Team Leader Bai is so strong, didn't expect to die so easily. Another person said, in my opinion, this death could have been avoided. Just blame Team Captain Yang and Deputy Team Captain Bai for conflicting with each other, leading to not acting together. Otherwise, how could they be ambushed to death? I heard that Deputy Team Captain Bai lost in the captain's competition, but Team Captain Yang said that his luck is the passive ability. Other than making people lucky, there is no other harmful ability. That's why the spiritual masters in other cities always call him the weakest captain, while Deputy Team Captain Bai is known as the invincible existence among the level 2 spiritual masters. How could he lose? At the same time, Fang Hou suddenly felt interested. This luck ability is really interesting. It turns out that Team Captain Yang's victory in the captain's competition is completely thanks to luck. While mocking, Deputy Team Captain Bai suddenly had a stomach ache and even dared not to use his own abilities. Although Team Captain Yang is very weak, but after all, he is a level 2 spiritual master, while Deputy Team Captain Bai is a typical cold and pretending person. If he temporarily stops mocking to go to the bathroom in front of everyone, it is better than directly killing him, so he pretended as if nothing happened and continued to fight. He thought no one knew he was going out, but at that time, there were many spiritual masters with keen hearing and vision, and they had smelled the scent under the stands for a long time. Upon hearing this, Fang Hou immediately left the hallway as it was just a gossip story with no useful information. Suddenly, a young man burst through the door and loudly shouted towards the work area, "Hurry up, come to the meeting room. Team Leader Yang has returned. Director Wang has called for an emergency meeting." Upon hearing this, Fang Hou immediately blended into the crowd, following them to the meeting room. Fang Hou would not miss this opportunity, as surely the emergency meeting would announce a lot of important information. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Soon after, everyone in the investigation team gathered in the meeting room, with a long meeting table on both sides filled up. There were both men and women, but they all looked quite young, most of them dressed in quirky and distinctive clothing. On the two sides of the table, there were many uniformed employees, and at the head of the table was Director Wang Dehai with a serious expression. Suddenly, Fang Hou smelled a strong smoke, which made him suspicious. In an emergency meeting, who would dare to smoke? Immediately, he followed the smell of smoke to search, only to find in the corner a man with a sad face sitting on the floor, constantly smoking, the meeting room filled with cigarette smoke. Seeing this scene, Fang Hou guessed that he was Captain Yang Min. With such a sorrowful face, it seemed that their relationship was not as bad as rumored. At the same time, Director Wang Dehai began the meeting, pointing to the portrait behind him and speaking loudly. This evil demon is called Demonic Image. Its current ability is to hide in the shadows. In a battle between Deputy Captain Bai and the demon, due to limited information, he could not recognize the existence of Demonic Image. No matter how fast he was, he couldn't escape from his own shadow, which is why he carelessly was attacked by the evil demon coming out of the shadows, causing him serious injury and ultimately leading to his death at the hands of the demon. Currently, Demonic Image's whereabouts are still unknown, but the demon has been eliminated by Captain Yang. So our next task is to find the whereabouts of Demonic Image, completely end this evil event, and seek revenge for Bai Tu. When it comes to this, Director Wang Dehai squeezed out a smile. However, in this unfortunate event, we also have good news. That is, our team leader Yang Ming has officially advanced to the 3rd rank spiritual master, becoming one of the top spiritual masters. As soon as this statement ended, the whole meeting room was in an uproar. Everyone's eyes widened. Only Fang Hou remained calm as usual. Oh my god, our Liu Duan city is really amazing. That's the 3rd rank. There are only a few people in the whole country who have achieved this rank. Fang Hou stared at Yang Ming in the corner of the room. Couldn't help but be curious. In other words, his spiritual sense has been enlightened more than 41%. So what will the effect of the 3rd rank luck be? At the same time, Yang Ming was sitting in the corner smoking, seemingly not hearing anything, his face showing no emotion. He just ruthlessly extinguished the cigarette in his hand on the ground. Under his feet, there were many cigarette butts. After that, he slowly got up from his knees, took the cigarette box out of his pocket, was about to light up another one, but found that it was empty. Feeling unsatisfied, he crushed the cigarette box and asked anyone got cigarettes? His voice was hoarse and tired, but no one responded. At this moment, Chief Wang Dihai's eyes showed a hint of unwillingness, but he still looked at him and shouted loudly, Yang Ming, snap out of it. You are now a third-level spiritual master, and the safety of Liu Duan City will need your protection in the future. Facing Chief Wang's scolding, Yang Ming still didn't react. He put his hands in his pockets and walked out as if he was about to die. It's okay. I'll go buy a pack myself. At that moment, Director Wang Dehai clenched his fists in anger, trembling and gritting his teeth. Then he slammed the table hard and turned to Yang Ming, shouting, Stop for me. Do you not want to avenge Bai too? But Yang Ming kept walking as if he didn't hear anything, muttering to himself, Revenge, revenge, can Xiao Bai come back to life. Meanwhile, Fang Hou saw him approaching and quickly pulled his hat down. Director Wang Dehai was so furious that he couldn't say anything, his face darkening. He sighed, then calmly took a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and threw it towards Yang Ming, saying, Here, I have some cigarettes. Upon hearing this, Yang Ming didn't even turn around, just raised his hand to catch it and muttered, Why didn't you say so earlier? After that, Yang Ming sat down right there, smoking and complaining. What kind of family does the head of Department Wang have? He smokes every day. Fang Hou looked at him and thought, this team leader Yang is quite interesting, calm, restrained, rational, already a spiritual master at level 3, shows no signs of mental distortion. Just then, the meeting room door was pushed open forcefully, and there was a panicked shout. Chief Wang Dehai, everyone pay attention immediately. Fang Hou felt uneasy. Seeing this, the angry Chief Wang Dehai exploded, repeatedly hitting the meeting table. It's you again. I've told you so many times, pay attention to discipline. Why is it always you? But before the employee could even finish getting scolded, he hugged himself and trembled, crying, Chief Wang Dehai, it's not good. The person you told me to take to the restroom just now has gone missing. They knocked me out and ran away, and even took off my uniform. Listening to this, Chief Wang Dehai was extremely angry and pained, causing him to stand up and say, What? He said, You said Fang Hou had escaped. Everyone needs to be on alert and find him for me. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone started to act in the crowd. Fang Hou put on his hat and sighed. I just woke up from fainting. It seems I'm still not professional enough, need more training. But at that moment, a familiar voice of a girl suddenly rang out in the meeting room. Fang Hou heard that voice, looked up, only to see Shen Ling Su standing up, looking at him with surprise and anger. I didn't expect you to be here. As soon as she finished speaking, everyone took out their guns. In an instant, the sound of guns being cocked echoed throughout the meeting room. Then everyone raised their guns, pointing them at Fang Hou. Yang Ming, on the other hand, didn't care, still sitting on the ground smoking. Seeing this, an investigator quickly shouted, Captain Yang, stay away from him. At the same time, Director Wang Dehai looked at him with a gloomy face. Fang Hou, do you know what the crime of attacking an investigator is? What do you intend to do? Who are you? But in the face of Director Wang Dehai's questions and the power of the spiritual masters, even facing 10 guns, Fang Hou remained unaffected. He calmly walked up to Yang Ming, crouched down, and calmly said, Do you want Bai Tu to come back to life? As soon as he spoke, Yang Ming's smoking movement suddenly stopped, and his face turned dark as he sternly said, Kid, no matter who you are, where you come from, don't play around with others. Then his lifeless eyes suddenly turned fierce, like a tiger coming down from the mountain, staring at Fang Hou, or else people will die. At this moment, Fang Hou felt an overwhelming spiritual power weighing on him. Could this be the power of a third-level spiritual master? But in the face of this immense pressure, Fang Hou's expression remained unchanged because to him, this was nothing at all. Right after that, he calmly said, You just need to answer whether you do or do not want to. In that calm manner of speaking, he seemed to carry an undeniable power. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but be amazed. Facing the power of a third-level spiritual master and still speaking so confidently, who is this Fang Hou? At the same time, Yang Ming stared at Fang Hou's calm eyes, wanting to see something, but he could only see a bottomless tranquility. At this point, Chief Wang Dehai no longer believed him at all. He angrily pointed at Fang Hou and said loudly, Fang Hou, what nonsense are you talking? Quickly bring him back to me. But just as the staff were preparing to take action, Yang Ming, who was squatting on the ground, stopped them. Seeing this, everyone was surprised, only seeing Yang Ming looking at Fang Hou with his sad face. The dead cannot come back to life. Even Chai Xiao Bai has been eaten clean by the monster. but I think I may have gone crazy. I didn't expect that what you said might be true. Right after that, he looked tired and asked with a bowed head, can you bring Xiao Bai back to life? Even he himself didn't know why he asked such a foolish question. Fang Hou didn't directly answer, but calmly asked, when he died, where were you? Were you far away from him? Hearing this, Yang Ming scratched his head and thought, at that time, because of the wrong clue, I was in the mountains near the town of Shambay. If I had found out earlier and gone to the town, maybe he wouldn't have died. Thinking of the town, he couldn't help but squeeze his forehead with his hand, his face filled with self-blame. Suddenly, Fang Hou said seriously, great, then give me his phone number and tell me a secret. Hearing this, Yang Ming was completely stunned, unable to keep up with Fang Hou's thoughts. A secret phone number? Are we talking about bringing Xiao Bai back to life? At this moment, Fang Hou gently closed his eyes and said, I cannot bring the dead back to life. Hearing this, Yang Ming immediately retorted, turns out it's all in vain after half a day. In an instant, his face became angry. A hint of killing intent flashed in his eyes, but at this moment, the corner of Fang Hou's mouth slightly lifted as he looked at Yang Ming and continued, but I can go back to the past to change the future. As soon as this was said, everyone gasped in astonishment. Going back to the past to change the future? This is even more sensational than resurrecting the dead. It's truly fantastical. He dares to fabricate. No one here believed Fang Hou's words, but Yang Ming seemed to be bewitched, believing without doubt. He looked at Fang Hou with suspicion. We are both spiritual masters. How can your abilities be so abnormal? At the same time, in the heart of someone present there, a storm of thoughts arose, and that person was Shen Lian Shu. She suddenly remembered the serious words Fang Hou had spoken in the director's office. At that time, she thought he was just bluffing, but she didn't expect him to use a different way to talk about his abilities. Going back to the past to change the future, it's unbelievable. On the other hand, Fang Hou raised his hand calmly and explained, yes, the phone number has a secret, because I will go back to the time before Bai Tu encountered trouble, call and inform him that you are coming to save him, so I need a secret for him to believe me. Seeing Yang Ming's suspicious face, Fang Hou gently said, Captain Yang, what's the harm in trying once? Upon hearing this, Yang Ming was momentarily speechless, and at the same time, he was also moved by Fang Hou's words. That's right. What's the harm in giving it a try? Immediately after, he took a deep breath and said, the phone number is... After that, he hesitantly scratched his head and said, because I am visually impaired, when Bai Tu had an incident, the phone was connected to Bluetooth for location tracking, so I will definitely receive the call. Then Yang Ming thought for a moment and slowly said, as for a secret, I will tell a secret that only I know about Bai Tu. I never planned to reveal it in my lifetime, fearing that Bai Tu would endanger my life if he found out, but now that he's no longer here, it's okay to say it. After speaking, sweat appeared on his face and he stammered. This secret is that the previous captain of the team selection contest did not have a stomachache like Bai Tu claimed. I actually gave him a laxative beforehand, but because of my luck, no one suspected me. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole hall fell into a strange silence, everyone gaping in disbelief at Yang Ming as if seeing him for the first time. At this, the head of the department, Wang Dehai, looked at him with anger and disdain. I didn't expect that. Such a bright face and yet playing dirty tricks like that. Yang Ming was so embarrassed and angry at being looked at by everyone, unable to hold back my frustration. How can I be blamed for this if not for that wretched idiot Bai Tu? Not finishing his sentence, he sighed deeply, his face once again filled with sadness and pain. Then he stood up and sighed, all right, the person is already dead. There's no need to mention it anymore. At this point, Fang Hou also stood up and suddenly said, the secret is enough. Wait for the phone call. After speaking, he said nothing more. Seeing Fang Hou speak so seriously, Yang Ming choked up and couldn't say anything. Right after that, he began to cry bitterly, quietly looking at Fang Hou in place. Seeing this, Chief Wang Dehai showed disgust, beginning to complain to himself. Why is he acting like a child, even crying and having snot running down? Just now, he was being arrogant with me. When Fang Hou suddenly fell silent, a whole assembly also fell silent. Everyone looked at him in astonishment, as if waiting to see him perform, to see how he would return to the past and change the future. But as time passed, Fang Hou didn't make any move. At this moment, Fang Hou suddenly spoke up. What are you all looking at me for? Continue the meeting. Upon hearing this, everyone was shocked. But Yang Ming couldn't hold back, looking at Fang Hou with suspicion. Hey, didn't you say you would go back to the past? We're waiting for you to act. Upon hearing this, Fang Hou's mouth corner lifted, looking at Yang Ming as if he were a fool. I never said I would go back right now. Don't be in such a hurry. Let's talk at 8 o'clock. Seeing this, Yang Ming felt deceived, clenched his jaw, glaring at Fang Hou. What the heck? What are we talking about? At the same time, Chief Wang Dehai pointed angrily at Fang Hou and said, "All right, Yang Ming, take this crazy guy talking nonsense to the detention room. He's lost his mind and can't control himself anymore." Upon hearing this, Yang Ming didn't want to comply, but he saw Chief Wang Dehai signaling to him. So Yang Ming had to look at Fang Hou and said, "Follow me." Fang Hou didn't say much, simply nodded and followed Yang Ming to the detention room. Not long after, the two people arrived in the prison room. At this time, both of them were silent, quietly sitting down beside the bed, thinking for a while. Yang Ming suddenly broke the silence. "I'm sure Director General Wang has calculated it. That's why he told me to bring you here. Don't think too much." It turns out that Yang Ming was afraid that this action would displease Fang Hou, because he hoped to revive Bai Tu lying on Fang Hou. Whether true or false, he couldn't accuse him in front of him, so no matter what first stabilized him, while Fang Hou remained calm as usual. "Yang Ming, either you tell me about the demonic image or about Deputy Chief Bai." Hearing this, Yang Ming leisurely lit a cigarette, then took a deep breath, thought for a moment and said, "Bai Tu, his ability is extremely fast speed. He has a superior speed compared to others in the same class, so he always has the absolute advantage in battle. It's a pity that this time." Two people chatted for a long time, during which Fang Hou even told Yang Ming about the lottery, but Fang Hou didn't get much useful information. Time flew by quickly. 3 hours passed in the blink of an eye. At that moment, the door of the cell was suddenly pushed open. The warden Wang Dehai and Shen Lian Xu came in with dark faces. Shen Ling Xu was even angry enough to throw a piece of paper at Fang Hou. Fang Hou realized that the numbers he had written down didn't match any winning numbers. Not only did he not win, but he didn't even match a single number. You can check it yourself. The winning numbers from this draw are the ones I just wrote down. Upon hearing this, Yang Ming glared at Fang Hou with a murderous look. "I told you, joking with others will have to be paid with your life." However, at this moment, Fang Hou remained calm, even smiling with a hidden meaning. "These are the winning numbers for tonight." Upon hearing this, Shen Ling Xu chuckled softly, looking at Fang Hou with satisfaction. "That's right. Didn't you say before that if you guessed wrong, you would pay with your life? Ha! I wonder how you will pay now." The sentence is not yet finished, only a sound is heard. A shiny knife suddenly appeared in his hand. Seeing that, the three were horrified. Yang Ming and Shen Lian Xu immediately shielded Director Wang Dehai, thinking that he was about to attack. But at this moment, Fang Hou smiled chillingly. "Don't worry, I can do what I said." Then he plunged the knife into his own forehead. Yang Ming and Shen Lian Xu were confused, tense, and stared at Fang Hou. "What are you going to do? Put the weapon down." However, the next second, Fang Hou decisively stabbed the knife into his own forehead. Before falling into a coma, he looked at the three. "So we meet again." Fang Hou returned from the dead under the guidance of Shen Lian Xu and Lai Wenji. Once again returned to the investigation agency. This time, he completely repeated the actions of the previous time to avoid causing the butterfly effect. However, this time, the number sequence given to Shen Ling Xu was the winning sequence that Fang Hou had just remembered. Before long, the three of them entered the investigation office. Suddenly, Fang Hou reached in his pocket, stopped, and calmly looked at the two people. He said that there would be a male staff member on the phone just before the turn ahead. As soon as he finished speaking, a man carrying documents walked towards them, and the phone rang. Seeing this, Shen Lian Xu and Lai Wenji were extremely surprised. "How is this possible? He just predicted that," they said. Meanwhile, Fang Hou, as usual, remained calm and continued walking ahead. Shen Ling Xu and Lai Wenji followed him. In the eyes of Shen Ling Xu and Lai Wenji, Fang Hou's current actions seemed as if he had been to the investigation office before. They only saw Fang Hou walk straight to the office area and then stop at the second row of seats from the bottom to the middle. The man stretched his shoulders and accidentally bumped into a female staff member walking by. True to Fang Hou's prediction, the next second, the man raised his hand and stretched his shoulders forcefully, causing the woman to spill her drink on herself. At that moment, a male colleague quickly stood up and helped the woman wipe the water, continuously apologizing. While the woman continued to speak loudly, "I can do it myself. What are you touching there for?" Looking at this scene, Shen Ling Xu felt uneasy, but still didn't change his view of Fang Hou. At the same time, Lai Wenji, looking at the scene in front of him, hesitantly said, "Could he really predict the future?" Seeing this, Shen Ling Xu frowned, sweat dripping down his forehead. Not sure of himself as he stammered in response, "No, it's just logical reasoning." In another turn of events, Fang Hou turned the tables, leading the two astonished people to the door of the room, then calmly opening the door and saying, "The room is here." Not only that, when they entered the room, he even skillfully pulled open drawers, finding the exact tea and coffee. Seeing this, the two people behind were so astonished that they were speechless, their eyes wide open like bells, standing still in place. After that, Fang Hou made a cup of coffee for Shen Ling Zhu and a cup of black tea for Lai Wenji. At this point, the two took the tea and coffee in disbelief, their pupils dilated as they looked at him in astonishment. After regaining their composure, Shen Ling Zhu looked at Fang Hou in amazement. Have you ever been to the investigative agency? Right now, Fang Hou carefully added 5 spoons of sugar into Shen Ling Zhu's coffee cup. Seeing this, Lai Wenji couldn't help but ask in surprise and suspicion, how did you know about Shen's investigation, and that she adds 5 spoons of sugar when she drinks coffee? Hearing this, Fang Hou calmly took a sip of tea, then gently replied, there's no need to be surprised. I've said before that my eyes can see the future, and right now, Chief Wang Dehai is free. You should go report to him. Upon hearing this, the two of them were once again shocked to the point of silence. They looked at Fang Hou without knowing what to say and quietly went to report to Chief Wang Dehai. At the same time, on a mountain near the town of Shambay, Yang Ming was driving, listening to music and speeding on the mountain road when suddenly the song was interrupted and the sound of a phone ringing echoed. Yang Ming picked up the phone and saw that it was an unknown number. Without any hesitation, he answered the call. Immediately, a carefree voice rang out with a somewhat defiant tone, completely different from the state after Bai Tu's death. Hello, who's there? At that moment, a deep and calm voice came from the other end. In half an hour, Bai Tu will die. Upon hearing this, Yang Ming suddenly hit the brakes, causing the wheels and the road to collide, creating 2 long skid marks. At this point, Yang Ming's face immediately became grim, with cold sweat breaking out on his face. What are you talking about? Immediately after, the carefree expression on his face disappeared, replaced by a strange and low voice. Who are you? At that moment, a calm voice came through on the other end. My name is Fang Hou. I can predict the future, and currently I am at the Investigation Bureau. As predicted, we will become colleagues. I predict that in half an hour, Bai Tu will be killed by a strange demon. You come to save him in time. As soon as Yang Ming finished speaking, he gritted his teeth in anger. I don't care who you are, but you must know that joking around could get you killed. But before he could finish his sentence, Fang Hou revealed a secret. Cutting off his mocking words, in the team captain selection competition, you drugged Bai Tu the night before, causing him to underperform. But because of your luck, no one suspected you. Upon hearing this, Yang Ming was shocked. He raised his phone and exclaimed in astonishment, damn it, how did you know? I never told anyone about this secret. However, Fang Hou did not respond directly, calmly saying, remember, I only said it once. Bai Tu is at the abandoned building on the outskirts of Shambay town, chasing after a demon's head. But there is also a demonic image there, which will emerge from his shadow at a crucial moment to attack him secretly, causing him serious injury, ultimately sacrificing himself to destroy the demon's head. After speaking, Fang Hou decisively hung up the phone. At this moment, Yang Ming looked at the phone for a long time without saying a word. His face was unpleasant, as if he was struggling inside. After some thought, he cursed. Annoying. Then he quickly dialed a number, turned the steering wheel sharply, turned the car around, and then stepped on the gas, speeding towards the Shambay town. After Fang Hou called to inform Yang Ming, he drank all the water in the cup in the room, then looked at the phone in his hand as if he was thinking. Next, I have to see how Captain Yang Ming performs. As soon as he finished speaking, Shen Ling Zhu, with one hand holding documents and the other holding a testing device, angrily said, Fang Hou, next I will conduct a test for your inherent pollution. But Fang Hou didn't react at all. Seeing this, Shen Ling Zhu looked at him with an unwelcoming expression, feeling greatly satisfied in his heart. Ha, so calm. How long can you continue to act in front of the lie detector? At this moment, Fang Hou directly took the phone from her hand, then skillfully placed his hand on it, and without any expression said, ask away. Seeing him so skilled, Shen Ling Zhu couldn't help but be surprised for a moment. So the first question is, if... Without waiting for her to finish, Fang Hou directly interrupted her. I choose to fight the demons. Hearing this, Shen Ling Zhu immediately gasped, and Fang Hou didn't even bother to notice her surprise, continuing to ask his second question. I will not join the demon faction, but if Zhao Hao joins the demon faction and tells me to betray, then I will personally send him on his way. At this point, Shen Ling Zhu was extremely shocked, so shocked that she couldn't speak. Her face couldn't help but sweat, but Fang Hou didn't stop, continuing to ask the last question according to his own will. The first thing I want to do after becoming a spiritual master is to kill all the demons in the world. Fang Hou didn't wait for Shen Ling Zhu to ask. He had already said all the questions and answers in one breath, and the lie detector didn't even bother pay attention to his lies from start to finish. After finishing speaking, Fang Hou stood up and walked out, speaking in a calm voice. The inspection is done. Let's go meet with Director Wang Dehai. Shenling Su was still stunned in place, not yet recovered. At this point, she didn't know who was inspecting whom. After a while, Shenling Su looked at the lie detector and said tearfully, "This is not right. It must be broken." In Director Wang Dehai's office, he immediately expressed his doubts. "Tell the truth, Mr. Fang. As a spiritual master who is new to the profession, your abilities surpass others. I find it hard to believe that you can predict the future." Fang Hou crossed his arms and remained expressionless. Director Wang, in this world, there are always people who cannot be evaluated by common sense. I am not on the same level as them. Hearing this, the faces of Director Wang Dehai and Shenling Su beside him immediately darkened. Wang Dehai even clenched his jaw with the intention of taking action against him, but unfortunately, he couldn't do anything. Right after that, he reached out to Shenling Su and said, "Miss Shen, where is the report on the testing of spiritual pollution?" Upon hearing this, Shenling Su felt very embarrassed and replied, "I did not write the report." During the testing process, Fang Hou predicted all the questions in advance and answered them perfectly. Furthermore, the lie detector did not react at all during the testing. Suddenly, Fang Hou realized that he had been too perfect in demonstrating his ability to predict the future. It seemed that he needed to find a weakness in himself to dispel their suspicions. After thinking for a while, Fang Hou pretended to look concerned and said to the head of the department, "Wang Dehai, however, although predicting the future does not require much effort, every time I do it, my mind becomes overwhelmed with information, and this comes at a very high cost, which is losing control of my spiritual purity. Therefore, this means that I cannot predict the distant future. I deliberately use my abilities in a cautious manner just to attract the attention of the investigation department and join them, and then obtain the incense stick to stabilize my spiritual purity." Hearing this, Chief Wang Dehai nodded in agreement. A logical cycle is formed in my mind, so it turns out that it is reasonable. In the investigation department, the use of incense stick is not a problem. A spiritual master can predict the future. I must definitely get him. After a moment of thought, Chief Wang Dehai hesitantly asked, "Fang, I wonder how much salary you expect when joining the investigation department." Seeing this, Fang Hou looked at Chief Wang Dehai with seriousness. "I request to enjoy the salary benefits of a level 2 spiritual master. In addition, I will be given an extra incense stick every month. Furthermore, if I need to use my abilities, I will have to pay extra." At this moment, Chief Wang Dehai's expression was clearly very difficult to look at, but the predicting ability was too strong. After a while, Chief Wang spoke up, "If we can verify that you can predict the future, then I can meet your demands. But I'm afraid we can't pay extra at this time." Fang Hou crossed his legs and directly interrupted Director General Wang Dehai. "Director General Wang, it seems that you still have not realized the value of predicting the future." At this point, Fang Hou's expression suddenly changed and he smirked coldly. "But it's okay. I have prepared a special gift for the investigation department." Hearing this, Director General Wang Dehai had a bad feeling and then suspiciously asked, "What gift?" At this point, Fang Hou smirked coldly. "Beitu's network." As soon as he finished speaking, Director General Wang Dehai seemed to be struck by lightning. His face turned pale. He was shocked and suspicious, exclaiming, "What?" He immediately slammed his hand on the table, then glared at Fang Hou with anger. "Are you using Beitu's network to threaten me?" But Fang Hou remained unfazed, still smiling. "If you're worried, you can call Baitu now." Listening, Director Wang Dehai didn't call immediately, but turned to give Shenling Su a look. Shenling Su also immediately understood and nodded. Then, she went to Fang Hou, pressing his shoulder with her hand, clearly indicating that if the situation was not good, she would immediately take action against Fang Hou. Seeing this, Fang Hou's mouth slightly lifted, glancing at Shenling Su standing beside him without any hesitation. At the same time, Director Wang Dehai began to dial a series of numbers on the desktop phone, preparing to call Baitu. But at that moment, the office door was forcefully pushed open. Seeing this, Director Wang Dehai's face immediately darkened, angry veins bulging, gritting his teeth. "I have said it many times, don't work in such a rush." Yang Ming quickly spoke. "Director General Wang, in our department, there must be someone named Fang Hou." Seeing the worried and flustered face of Yang Ming, instinctively, the deputy head Wang Dehai immediately thought of something bad, worried and hastily asked, "Why are you back here? Where is Bai Tao? Weren't you supposed to go capture the demon leader with him?" Hearing this, Yang Ming seemed distracted as he replied, Xiao Bai is seriously injured. He's in the hospital, but it's okay." After speaking, he began to look around and asked again, "Where is Fang Hou?" Meanwhile, Shenling Xu was standing beside him, and suddenly a blazing flame appeared in her white palm. Her threatening expression spoke without words. Tell me, what have you done to the team leader Bai? At this time, Fang Hou didn't pay attention to her, but furrowed his brows slightly, glanced at Yang Ming standing next to him, and thought, just injured, it seems he has been saved. At the same time, Director Wang Dehai stood up and glared at Fang Hou. Fang Hou is right in front of you. Just now he said he was giving a big gift to the investigation department, and now you are reporting that Bai Tu is seriously injured. This is indeed a big gift. In that moment, he thought a lot in his head. If Fang Hou can injure a high-level spiritual master, then the power behind him is truly unimaginable. Not only powerful, but also extremely bold, daring to injure someone and then provoke the investigation department. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Ming immediately raised his index finger and smiled at Director Wang Dehai. Exactly, it's true. This is a big gift. Moreover, it's an extremely big gift. After saying that, he walked towards Fang Hou, while Shenling Xu, who had just been like a female tiger, now stood there with a shameful and helpless look on her face. At this moment, Yang Ming looked at Fang Hou calmly and said, "You are Fang Hou, aren't you?" Before he could finish, Yang Ming hugged him tightly and started to cry, saying, "This time, thanks to your phone call reminding me beforehand, I was able to arrive in time to save Xiao Bai. Otherwise, he would have been in real danger. Furthermore, everything that happened at the scene was exactly as you said." Seeing this, Director General Wang Dehai and Shenlian Xu were shocked and speechless, looking at him with disbelief. On the other hand, Fang Hou proudly said, "Director General Wang, how do you like my big gift?" Meanwhile, Yang Ming was crying silently, wiping away her tears and mucus. Then Fang Hou glanced at Shenlian Xu and said, "And you, Miss Shen, take back your divine power." At this point, the flames in Shenlian Xu's hands went out, but she looked at Fang Hou in disbelief and anger. She clenched her jaw and said, "Fang Hou saved the life of the #1 spiritual master in Liu Duan City with just a phone call. Can he really predict the future?" Director Wang Dehai looked at Fang Hou for a moment and said, "If Bai Chao's situation was not caused by human interference, then your abilities are truly of very strategic value. I can meet your request, but for now, Miss Shen, please take Mr. Fang to the guest room first. We can discuss everything after the meeting. Yang Ming, please stay." Upon hearing this, Yang Ming looked up at Director Wang Dehai and seeing his gaze, immediately stopped his tears and calmly replied, "Yes." Then Yang Ming approached Fang Hou and softly said, "I will come find you later." In the guest room, the two looked at each other and the atmosphere became extremely awkward. At this moment, Shenlian Xu couldn't help but think to herself as she looked at Fang Hou, "Not only does he know my preferences, but he can even see my private tattoos. It always feels like I'm transparent in front of him, like I have no secrets." Thinking this, her cheeks couldn't help but flush. At the same time, Fang Hou also stared at her without blinking. Shenling Xu also recognized this, feeling panicked in her heart. Why did he keep staring at her neck like that? It turned out that Shenling Xu's neck in front of Fang Hou reminded him of his wife, also fair and slender like that. He even wanted to use a surgical knife to stab it, but unfortunately the blood of a stranger was warm, unlike his demon wife, but my wife would also bleed, wouldn't she? If her blood splattered on me, I would probably feel very refreshed. At that moment, when the two were facing each other in silence, suddenly there was a loud noise. The door of the room was forcefully pushed open, and Yang Ming pretended to be surprised, saying in a stern tone, "Lion Shu, you go out first. I have something to say to Fang Hou in private." Shenling Xu did not want to stay here immediately, like being rescued. She bit her lip, hugged her chest, and quickly walked out of the room. Seeing this, Yang Ming looked suspicious but didn't think much. At this moment, Yang Ming confirmed that Shenlian Xu had left, so he sat opposite Fang Hou with a serious face, looking at him with hostility. Seeing this, Fang Hou remained expressionless, not saying a word, just staring at him. Suddenly, Yang Ming's expression changed, the seriousness disappeared, and instead he had a flattering expression. "Fang Hou, I didn't tell anyone about slipping by his drugs." At this point, Fang Hou looked helpless. He realized that this captain has a very strange attention to detail. Even the director, when faced with the ability to predict the future, is extremely cautious, yet he only cares about whether someone has told his drug story to others. This captain is indeed a bit interesting. After some thought, Fang Hou looked at Yang Ming pale and said, "Apart from me, no one currently knows." Hearing this, Yang Ming breathed a sigh of relief, but at this moment, Fang Hou suddenly smirked, looking at him with a hidden meaning, but in the future, it's not certain. Hearing this, Yang Ming's expression changed once again, becoming as unpleasant as if he had eaten something bad. "What do you mean?" He then looked at Fang Hou threateningly. "You plan to join the investigation team, don't you? I am currently the captain of the investigation team. You understand the waters in the investigation team are deep and you are a newcomer. Before he could finish, Fang Hou directly cut him off. What I mean is to increase the money. Captain Yang also wouldn't want the matter of extortion to be known by Deputy Captain Bai. 100 currency. No bargaining. After speaking Fang Hou, Yang Ming immediately became hot-tempered, glaring at Fang Hou and pointing his finger at him. You haven't even joined the investigation department yet. Do you believe that just one word from me is enough? Before Yang Ming could finish speaking, Fang Hou directly raised the price by 200 currency. Seeing this, Yang Ming's demeanor immediately weakened and he began to plead in front of Fang Hou. Oh my, you've done enough. My monthly salary is only 10 currency. So just go ahead and speak. I'd rather be beaten to death by Xiao Bai. Hearing this, Fang Hou took a deep breath, then shouted loudly towards Yang Ming. All right. Seeing this, Yang Ming didn't say anything more, just showing a frustrated and resigned expression. All right, 200 it is. In the end, he reluctantly took out 200 currency from his small safe and handed it over to Fang Hou as hush money. Time passed quickly. Everyone gathered in the office of the bureau chief to wait for the lottery results. In the office, Fang Hou and Shen Lian Xu sat opposite the bureau chief Wang Dehai, while Yang Ming sat slumped in the corner of the room with a sad expression. Suddenly, Yang Ming poked Shen Lian Xu with his finger. Lian Xu, let me borrow some currency. Upon hearing this, Shen Lian Xu angrily replied, you are the team leader earning 20 currency a month while I only have 5 currency, and yet you still ask to borrow money from me. I won't lend it to you. The conversation between the two caught Fang Hou's attention and he realized that he had been too impulsive. It seemed that he would have to lend Yang Ming some money next time. At that moment, Bureau Chief Wang Dehai suddenly spoke up. All right, stop arguing. Let's start the lottery. Now everyone focused on the screen, listening to the announcer reading the winning numbers. In the screen, the numbers read, today's winning numbers are 1,121,718, 26, 27, and 05. Seeing this, Shen Lian Xu, Yang Ming, and director Wang Dehai in front of the screen were all extremely surprised, never expecting that the numbers would match the ones written on the paper. The atmosphere in the room immediately became very quiet. At this moment, Yang Ming immediately hugged Fang Hou and excitedly said, from now on, Fang, you are my true brother. Please help me predict the winning numbers for the next draw. Suddenly, director Wang Dehai loudly exclaimed, disturb. Predicting Fang Hou's future ability will further exacerbate the problem of uncontrollable spiritual instability, absolutely cannot be used for such trivial matters. Seeing this, Yang Ming had to let go, murmuring continuously, how can it be called a trivial matter? I would rather lose control of my spiritual stability than have to leave. After scolding Yang Ming, director Wang Dehai immediately changed his expression, smiling and shaking hands with Fang Hou. Now your ability to predict the future is basically confirmed, but it must be kept secret to the outside. Just say it's an intuitive ability, so Fang Hou, I officially invite you to join the Investigation Bureau, and the benefits you mentioned earlier will also be fully implemented. Fang Hou did not show any further emotion, just nodded slightly. At this moment, Yang Ming looked serious at director Wang Dehai. Keep it a secret to the outside, so how do you intend to report to your superiors, director? Immediately after, director Wang Dehai looked at Yang Ming. Report to the Investigation Bureau. Request to include the Global Spiritual Master Talent File. Related documents will be included in the confidential case file of Fang Hou, also known as the Prophet. At the same time, Fang Hou's mouth couldn't help but curve up. It's not in vain that he has been revived once. Now with the support of the investigative agency's resources, revenge will be one step closer. My dear wife, please wait. Hearing this, Yang Ming looked at him in astonishment. Fang Hou's ability is very valuable. He reports like that, not afraid that his superiors will take action against him. Immediately after that, Yang Ming's expression suddenly changed, and he looked at Chief Wang Dehai with anger. Furthermore, why am I not included in the Global Spiritual Master Talent File? He just arrived and was included. Moreover, he was rank S. Obviously, there is something suspicious here. Definitely something suspicious. This caused Chief Wang Dehai to feel like he was sitting on a pile of fire, his whole body radiating a bright golden light. He deliberately ignored the second half of Yang Ming's statement. That's why he had to go to a better place to develop. Now, strange events are happening all over the world. I always feel that something is about to happen. If Fang Hou comes to the Bureau, it will definitely be better than staying in Liu Duan City, where he can unleash greater value. Hearing that, Yang Ming Bu said, you are truly noble, you are truly great. After speaking, he looked at Fang Hou with seriousness. Yes, according to the current information, you and Zhao Hao are good friends. He is just like you, awakened in a dark prison and survived. I think he can also join the Investigation Bureau. After speaking, the corner of Bureau Chief Wang Dehai's mouth couldn't help but curve up with a very pleased expression. Using Zhao Hao as a binding force, it can not only bring the investigation bureau and Fang Hou closer, but also allow Zhao Hao to seek his help when needed. After he joins the bureau, there will be an emotional card in hand, and there is no need to worry about other organizations offering a higher price for training people. My decision is truly perfect. But at this moment, Shen Lian Xu's face turned red with an unhappy expression. But Director Wang, his ability is sexual ability. Such a filthy person, do we really need him? Hearing this, Director Wang Dehai smiled. It's okay, I believe there will be a time when we need him. Furthermore, as his spiritual power increases, his abilities will also make a leap in quality, allowing him to join us with great benefits and no harm. But unexpectedly, Fang Hou saw through it early on, wanting to use Zhao Hao to control me, truly cunning. After some thought, he looked at Director Wang Dehai with a cold expression. It's up to you. Director Wang Dehai looked at Yang Ming and said, now Fang Hou is one of us. Yang Ming, please tell us the specific situation of demonic according to your investigation. Do you believe the attack was accidental or deliberately arranged? Upon hearing about demonic, Yang Ming's face immediately became serious. Although there is no direct evidence, I feel that it is likely caused by humans. When I fought with demonic, I intentionally observed, despite its entire body being shrouded in darkness resembling a demon, the sensation I felt while fighting was similar to fighting a human. If it were for my lucky strike that killed the head long before, allowing me to break through to the third realm, right on the spot, I am afraid I would not be a match for demonic. Furthermore, the opponent is very strange. During the fight, it seems to always leap water. As soon as it saw me break through, it immediately sank into the shadows and disappeared, as if it was waiting for me to level up. Then Yang Ming pulled out a card. I also found this ace of spades at the crime scene. Seeing this, Fang Hou looked skeptical. Is this card made of steel? Do demons also use this kind of thing? At this moment, the chief Wang Dehai looked at Yang Ming and said, well, if this is what demonic dropped, then it is very likely to be a spiritual master, maybe even with a huge organization behind it. After speaking, he rubbed his chin as if thinking. It seems that the demonic case is not simple. We have to calculate slowly. Okay, we'll stop here today. Miss Shen, Fang Hou is new, so let her take him through the admission procedures first. After completing the procedures, Fang Hou went straight back home. At this time, his wife was extremely excited, like butterflies fluttering around Fang Hou. Darling, are you off work now? I miss you so much. But Fang Hou just quietly sat on the sofa, looking at the investigator ID in his hand. Then he took out a brown leather bag, unzipped it with a pop. Immediately, countless sparkling gold coins poured out. Seeing that, his wife beside him excitedly exclaimed, wow, honey, you're so good at making money. It's amazing. At this moment, Fang Hou picked up a coin to examine. So this is the currency in short supply on the black market. One coin can be sold for up to 10 million, even hundreds of millions, sometimes even with money. It's hard to buy. True to Captain Yang Ming, he can take out so much currency at once. If it were a normal spiritual master, even selling themselves would be hard to do. At this moment, Fang Hou couldn't help but smile. They say I'm giving money, but it's better to say he is thanking me for warning him to say bye. It can be seen that their relationship is very good. Right after that, he chuckled slyly and sank into thought, there's still 200 currency in this reward. How can I use it to get the greatest benefit? He was thinking about the best use of currency, but at that moment, the room door suddenly knocked, so he looked through the cat's eye on the door in surprise to discover a human eye, and the whole eye was cool red, making him directly unconscious. He only felt like someone hitting him hard with a stick on his neck, not knowing how long it had passed. Fang Hou just woke up from a coma, but now he found himself no longer at home, but in an old rotten warehouse tied up tightly, the cold chains wrapped tightly around his body. No matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't escape. He looked around and noticed the strong smell of decay, like the smell of decaying corpses, and there were constantly strange noises. The warehouse was very large but extremely crude. Everywhere there were dark, red, dried blood stains. Not far away, Fang Hou displayed a row of various torture devices, each covered in blood, clearly indicating that this place had executed many people. Perhaps due to environmental influences, there were more wandering demons in this warehouse, even with many surrounding Fang Hou. Fang Hou continuously drooled, only to regret that before he could see, these demons could not touch Fang Hou. In the center of the warehouse was a meat grinder, a machine that had rusted with a very special design. In front of Fang Hou was a funnel, inside of which were sharp metal blades. At this moment, next to the meat grinder, a man in a long coat and a hat stood there, apparently repairing the meat grinder. Seeing this, Fang Hou stared at him, clearly indicating that this was the person who had attacked him through the cat's eye before. Suddenly, this man seemed to sense something. His movement on his hand abruptly stopped. Then he suddenly turned his head. A pair of bloodshot eyes, almost no whites showing, appeared before him, his face pale and his figure thin like a skeleton wrapped in skin. The man looked into his eyes. Fang Hou finally understood. His attack must be related to those strange eyes. At the same time, the man stared at Fang Hou, smirked and said, "You're awake, ha!" At the same time, Fang Hou looked at him expressionless, and the surrounding demons began to gather more and more, staring at the two of them. Now, his fierce red eyes stared at Fang Hou in front of him, with a slightly mad look. Seeing this, Fang Hou said nothing, only staring intently into his fierce red eyes. It seemed that he was the one who had attacked him. Before passing out, he had seen those eyes through the cat's eyes. Suddenly, the man looked at Fang Hou and spoke hoarsely and sickly. "Wake up quickly. You don't look like a spiritual master who's just starting out at all. It seems like you and I are both geniuses. I like to torture geniuses the most." The man muttered to himself. A crazy and cruel smile appeared on his face, his pupils dilated. But facing the situation in front of him, Fang Hou showed no sign of fear and didn't release any thoughts. It seems that his ability is related to these eyes. A spiritual master, huh? He even considers himself a genius. Thinking of this, Fang Hou suddenly woke up. Then he looked at the man and said casually, "Are you Wang Zitang's cousin? Have you finished repairing a machine?" Hearing this, the man was slightly shocked, then his mouth twitched continuously. "You know me not bad. I am Lin Ziyang, the genius cousin of that waste." After that, a look of confusion appeared on his face. He turned around and continued to fix the machine. "Unfortunately, I haven't killed many people lately, so the machine is a bit old. Please be patient, it will be done soon." Immediately, Fang Hou looked at him calmly. "I also heard you mention your useless cousin. Hurry up and finish, I don't like wasting time." Hearing this, the man was shocked and looked at Fang Hou with a calm face. I cannot judge him at the moment, but the next second, his body suddenly began to tremble uncontrollably, and he burst into a crazed laughter. "I have to say, you are really interesting, and you fit my taste, but unfortunately, you are about to die." Seeing this, Fang Hou appeared very helpless. "It seems that you are sick or something." Then he looked at the man's face and couldn't help but think that his words and actions were chaotic, crazy, and disorderly, like the symptoms of loss of control that everyone talks about on the forum. After thinking for a while, Fang Hou suddenly looked at him with a sly smile. "The funniest thing is that before he died, your brother still tried to pull me into the water, using his dirty, bloody hands to constantly pull my pants. Do you know how I reacted?" Seeing that Fang Hou not only wasn't afraid, but also laughed very comfortably, Lin Ziyang, who was in a temporary frenzy, was stunned as if he didn't know what to say next, and even had a cold sweat on his face, making him a little scared. In the next second, Fang Hou looked even crazier than him, laughing even more wildly. I stepped hard on his hand and kept spinning it. His screams were really amazing. Lin Ziyang looked at Fang Hou in astonishment, took a few seconds to recover, and became even more furious and impulsive. "Damn it, you deserve to die. You deserve to die." Then he took out a red certificate from his bag, looked at Fang Hou calmly, and shouted wildly, "I will torture you to death, throw you into the meat grinder, and feed you to wild dogs and cats. It's best to exchange it for a certificate of kindness." Hearing this, Fang Hou not only remained calm, but also looked at him with disdain. "Just a useless person, lost control of his instincts. I didn't expect that such a small demonic power could turn you into a mad dog, so you are useless to what extent?" Hearing this, Lin Ziyang immediately got angry and said, "Damn it." He then looked at Fang Hou and thought to himself, he shouldn't be like this, he should be afraid, he should be on his knees begging me. That's the right thing to do. After that, he seemed to go crazy, ran to the torture equipment, started choosing all kinds of torture tools, while constantly shouting, "I will torture you to death. Wait until you are no longer intact," gasping for breath. "Let's see how bold you can be." At this moment, Lin Ziyang was holding a small needle. "Too small. I have to use the most brutal torture tools to teach you a lesson." Fang Hou's voice calmly rang out as he looked at Lin Ziyang with disdain. "Truly a waste of space. It takes half a day just to choose a torture tool." Hearing this, Lin Ziyang immediately shouted, "Shut up." Then he crazily slammed his hands on the torture tool rack and grabbed a pair of pliers. With a fierce look on his face, he approached Fang Hou, continuously laughing and pointing at the pliers in his hand. "Your mouth is very sharp. I'll pluck out each of your teeth. Quickly tell me you're scared. Beg for my forgiveness. Hurry up." However, Fang Hou's face remained as calm as an ancient well. He looked at the angry Lin Ziyang and spoke calmly, without any emotion. "And you? How do you want to die? Do you want to be smashed bone by bone with a hammer? Or do you want to be punched into mush by a cleaver? Tell me how you want to die. I will try to meet your request. At this moment, Fang Hou remained calm like a monk in meditation, without a ripple, yet his words sent shivers down Lin Ziyang's spine, causing the maniacal smile on his face to vanish. He stared at Fang Hou with fierce red eyes and invisible fear spreading. Seeing this, Fang Hao's mouth curled into a sinister smile. It's a difficult choice, but it's okay. Because you are Wang Zitang's cousin, I will kindly help you choose the Spirit Lake. I just happen to have a scalpel that can cut pieces of flesh off your body, but I'm not an expert, so it might take a few hundred or just a few dozen stabs for you to die. You may not feel a full sensation of pain as your body bleeds, flesh torn, and bones shattered. I hope you understand. At this moment, Lin Ziyang's gaze towards Fang Hou has changed, becoming full of suspicion. Looking at Fang Hou, he couldn't understand. Clearly, he is tied to the chair like a fish on the cutting board. Why is Fang Hou still so calm? Even in his tone, there is a hidden nonchalant confidence. This makes Lin Ziyang extremely uneasy, clenches his jaw, cold sweat running down his back. Finally, who is the one losing control of rationality? The crazy one. It's him. After calming down, he points the pliers at Fang Hou again. Are you not seeing the situation clearly? Now the one holding your life is me, yet you still dare to threaten me here. After saying that, Lin Ziyang stares at Fang Hou, trying to find a little fear on his face, however. Fang Hou did not show any fear, but a calm demeanor holding everything together. You are wrong. Your life is still in my hands. Afterwards, he tilted his head and glanced at a demon who had been craving flesh for a while. I have seen you standing by for a long time. Do you really want to eat human flesh? Seeing this, Lin Ziyang was immediately shocked. Who are you talking to? At this moment, Fang Hou smirked coldly as he looked at him and the demon. Can't you see? It's here to take your life. At the same time, the space next to Fang Hou began to warp, and in the next moment, Lin Ziyang was filled with extreme fear by the demon in front of him. His face turned pale, his pupils dilated, speechless. In front of him, suddenly appeared a green-bodied demon with 6 black claws. At this moment, Lin Ziyang yelled in horror. Where the hell did this damn demon come from? After speaking, he aggressively turned his head and pointed at Fang Hou. It's you who's insane. At this point, Fang Hou smiled again. Not just one, there are more to come. It's time to feast. He and the surrounding demons looked at each other, and in an instant, the atmosphere around them began to warp. In the warehouse, which was originally empty, suddenly appeared some branches with terrifying faces, extremely terrifying shapes, their eyes flashing with excitement and bloodlust, their mouths constantly emitting horrifying screams while slowly surrounding the two people. At this moment, Lin Ziyang completely collapsed, unable to believe what he saw. No, this is an illusion. This is not real. Seeing this, Fang Hou laughed wildly, and with his crazed laughter, everything in front of him darkened. Just now, Fang Hou had returned home again, only to see himself sitting on the sofa expressionless, while his wife, dressed in silk pajamas, smiled and shook beside him, saying, Darling, are you back? I miss you so much. Of course, Fang Hou did not reply to his wife, but only leaned back on the sofa, closing his eyes as if waiting for something. Right now, in his mind, he constantly saw the scene of being torn apart by the demon tree earlier, but when he thought about it, he was not afraid. On the contrary, he felt this feeling great, and this also increased his ability to endure pain. At this moment, the sound of knocking on the door sounded on time. Hearing the sound, Fang Hou calmly took out the scalpel from his pocket, then slowly stood up and walked towards the door. At this time, his wife lying on the table cheerfully asked, Husband, do we have visitors coming? At the same time, Fang Hou smirked. It's time to make you experience pain. You will not be completely released to take away your life because I promise to let you die in pain. Quickly, Fang Hou stood in front of the door. At this moment, he and Lin Ziyang were only separated by a door. He raised the knife inside, while Lin Ziyang stood outside, staring bloodthirstily into the cat's eyes. At this moment, Lin Ziyang was a little excited because he had heard the footsteps of Fang Hou. All he had to do was wait for Fang Hou to look through the cat's eyes. Just a glance was enough to make Fang Hou lose consciousness. Fang Hou quickly raised his hand inside the house, and in an instant, with a loud sound, the knife turned into a bright silver light, stabbing fiercely into the cat's eye. It pierced through the cat's eye without any obstacles and into Lin Ziyang's eyeball. At that moment, a desperate scream rang out. Lin Ziyang held the injured eye, constantly crying out in pain. At the same time, Fang Hou's pain tolerance flared up. An intense pain that could not be expressed in words spread throughout his body. A pain 10 times more agonizing than death erupted in this moment. Lin Ziyang couldn't even bear it for a second and immediately fainted, unconscious on the bloody ground. Seeing this, Fang Hou slowly opened the door of the room. looked at Lin Ziyang lying on the ground, covered in blood, and then calmly grabbed his ankle, dragging him into the house like a dead dog. Right after that, with a loud bang, the door slammed shut. At the same time, Fang Hou pulled out a scalpel and the hallway once again sank into silence. Then, Fang Hou began to search Lin Ziyang because he liked things like trump cards that could be used to turn the tables, but he didn't like others having trump cards. So to avoid being turned the tables on in the future when torturing him, the search was necessary. If he found something good, he'd keep it for himself to use. Quickly, Fang Hou found some loose currency, a mobile phone, and a bunch of keys on Lin Ziyang. Seeing this, Fang Hou took the phone to check if there was any useful information. His wife, on the other hand, was still standing by, looking on with curiosity, asking, "Honey, who is this person?" After that, he looked at the bronze candlestick next to it. Fang Hou discovered that on this item, there was clearly a sense of demonic breath. Feeling this familiar sensation, Fang Hou had a judgment in his heart. This bronze candlestick is a demonic object. It seems that Lin Ziyang's position is not low, even has demonic energy, although obviously not as powerful as his surgical knife, but it is still a demonic object in terms of his real power, being defeated by him in just one move, estimated not even at level 2. After thinking, Fang Hou put down the bronze candlestick and took Lin Ziyang's phone. He was surprised to find that there was no password. As he kept flipping through the phone, finally, Fang Hou also saw the information he wanted. It turns out Lin Ziyang is a member of the Light Club. This must be an organization established by folk soul cultivators, those affected by demonic power causing their minds to distort. Yet they take the name Light. It's really ironic. At this moment, Fang Hou saw some simple information about buying incense sticks on the black market, so it can be seen that incense sticks can only act as a slowing agent, not completely inhibiting the loss of instinctive control. Suddenly, Fang Hou discovered that on his phone, there were many videos of brutal murders, only showing a delivery person entering the warehouse in front of Lin Ziyang. When the delivery person smiled while delivering food in front of him, his expression suddenly changed, immediately revealing a horrific look. The delivery person was brutally tortured, his spiritual control lost, even more terrifying than demonic energy. Immediately, Fang Hou opened the food delivery app, searching for the specific address of the warehouse. Seeing this, his sweet wife beside him said, "Honey, we're so smart." As for Fang Hou, he looked at Lin Ziyang with a sinister smile, as if he already had a perfect plan in mind. After thinking, Fang Hou put Lin Ziyang on his shoulders and walked out. It turns out that Fang Hou had thought of the idea of poisoning others with poison, and he had to let Lin Ziyang know what true cruelty is. A moment later, Lin Ziyang was taken to the warehouse and woke up, but before he could understand what was happening, he felt intense pain in his eyes and couldn't help but scream in agony. After a while, he unconsciously looked around with his remaining eye. The more he looked, the more familiar it seemed. "Isn't this my warehouse?" Thinking so, he tried to stand up, but found himself unable to, and heard the familiar sound of metal chains. Immediately, he looked down, his face instantly pale. He was horrified to find himself tied to a chair in the middle of the warehouse. Seeing this, Fang Hou calmly said, "You woke up later than I expected, but just in time." After speaking, Fang Hou started the meat grinder and only heard a loud noise. The meat grinder had been fixed. The blade inside was spinning at high speed, constantly making a loud, ear-piercing noise. Looking at the meat grinder, Lin Ziyang clearly realized something immediately. He panicked and shouted, "Who are you? Who are you after all?" Hearing this, Fang Hou turned around, calmly looking at him with deep eyes. "You came to my house in the middle of the night, knock on the door. What, you didn't know who I am?" As soon as he said this, Lin Ziyang's pupils suddenly contracted. He immediately remembered, and cold sweat ran down his face, turning pale. "You are Fang Hou." Hearing this, Fang Hou smiled, slowly approaching him, and replied, "Yes, the reward is that I will torture you to death." Then, Fang Hou took out a scalpel, shaking it in front of Lin Ziyang. "Initially, to prevent your abilities, I should have gouged out both of your eyes, but I want you to see clearly how you die."